Hey, good evening, everybody. Happy Monday evening. So we've got a good show tonight. A gentleman whose art graces the walls of my house is going to be my guest this evening, and I think we've talked about it before. I do have several My Little Pony pieces of artwork, and Tony Fleecs has been the artist of them. He's probably when I told my daughter and my wife just 10 minutes ago that's who I had on tonight. They were a little bit upset because they're in the middle of other projects and they wanted to watch the show. So they're going to have to watch it on the rewind. But I appreciate everybody who's tuning in live to this one. So I don't want to leave Tony in the green room. So let's get this thing started. Hey, Tony.
Hey,
How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I just came from a My Little Pony convention. Actually, tell your wife and daughter that I had all sorts of pony stories I could have shared with them if they would have only been here.
Well, where is a My Little Pony convention at?
Well, they still have probably like, I don't know, 15 or 20 of them, I guess. They're of different sizes. There was a huge one that happened in Baltimore every year, and that stopped in 2019. This one I was at this weekend was in Dallas. So it's like in a hotel, it's a hotel show, like old school comic shows.
Do they have a lot of artists that go to that, or is it more for merchandise?
It's a lot of fan artists. So much of that whole community, it sort of reminds me of like what Star Trek cons were before, all the merchandising happened and stuff. Like it's people making stuff about the thing they like. So there's a whole vendor hall, but it was me and Tom Zoller, who also worked on the comics. And then everybody else is pretty much fan artists or people that have done like, covers for the comics or Hasbro and the animation companies always have this like in their contract, those people aren't allowed to go sell their work, but we're not allowed to, or there's no, comic books, there's no sort of restrictions on selling your work like that. So they can get the comic folks.
Well, that's good. How do the artists feel about that kind of a restriction on the work that they do?
I never asked them.
Okay. I'm curious. I've heard of, usually you can't show artwork if it hasn't been seen, but once it's out there, you think the artist would have liberty with the art if it was returned to them.
I'm not sure what the deal is with that. Well, I mean, all the art for that, all the animation art would all be digital.
Yeah, that's true.
For the most part. So I don't think it gets returned to them. And I haven't really had occasion to ask them how they feel about it. But you don't really see too many of them. There's some Simpsons guys that you'll see out, but I feel like that might be a little bit like on the hush, like a little shaky.
Right.
And then like Larry Houston from X-Men, you see him out there, but yeah, it's few and far between the animation guy. You think like if somebody told them how much money there was to be made going out and sketching, these guys would be who made like, Aladdin or the Ninja Turtles cartoon or whatever would be out there selling their wares. But I assume there's some sort of, I know for Hasbro there was on My Little Pony. So I assume in most of these contracts, there's somebody saying, don't go draw.
Mm-hmm. Well,
go sell our stuff.
That's too bad. They should just see you, reeling in the cash over at your table. That's why they have to come over and be like, man, how are you doing this? What's the secret sauce that you've got working for you?
Yeah, I guess that's just it. Just the very specific, in the case of ponies, it was the very specific thing where there's a property that's very popular with a subsect of fans that are ravenous. And I'm one of the few people that's allowed to sell their work from it. Worked out for me.
Yeah, I mean, lucky you. That's fantastic. So, lots of things I want to talk about, but I want to, as an artist, I know you're also a collector, so everybody knows Tony has a calf gallery. I think I linked it into the description, but I'll post it into the chat so everybody has access to Tony's calf gallery as well. But what prompted this career? Did you always want to be an artist when you were growing up, or when did that? When did the creative side of you kind of kick in to choose this was going to be a career path? Because when we were in the green room, you mentioned moving to California without it didn't sound like you had much of a defined direction for, your professional career.
Well, I just didn't have a job at that point.
Okay.
I always planned on being an artist on making comics. Or originally it was like I would either make like Disney cartoons or I was going to make comic books.
Okay.
I went to college for animation and I sort of figured out like that's not exactly what I'm looking for. And then when I started making comics, I was like, well, that is exactly what I'm looking for. So I made my first book in 2006 just on my own. It was like it was going to be self-published, but there was a small press publisher that put it out, and it was just an autobiographical comic about me, because I didn't have any other stories to tell at that time. I was just a young kid in my 20s, but I knew I wanted to start making stuff. So I made that. And then I moved out here from the Midwest to Los Angeles. And since then, for the longest time, I was just sort of jumping from job to job and just sort of making ends meet. And then into 2012, I got that job on Ponies, and I had been doing pretty good. Like I had chained together enough gigs right before that to be doing good. Like I just worked all the time. I worked at the studio with Chris Moreno and Tone Rodriguez and a bunch of other guys, Chris Burnham. And we just sort of we'd just go in there and hustle real hard. And so I became like a real hustler. And it sort of was like a work begat more work thing. But then I got Ponies, and then it sort of went to a different level where I had published comic book work all the time instead of just like, a random, I was like art directing comic books, or I was lettering stuff or coloring, or, here and there would do covers or just short stories and stuff. And then I got Ponies, and I did that for a long time.
How did you get that job? I mean, was it something you had to kind of try out for, or did somebody seek you out?
Yeah, I tried out to draw Ninja Turtles. It was my buddy Josh, who I did a Oni book with called Jeff Steinberg, Champion of Earth. He was going to go write a Turtles one shot, and he said, "Oh, you should come draw this." And I said, "Well, I don't, okay, but how?" And he was like, "Well, just here's the editor's email." And so I started emailing the editor, and then I did samples for him. Mm-hmm. And at the time was right close to the IDW relaunch when they were like a little grittier. And I think like as the book went on, it got cartoonier. But at the time they wanted to really differentiate, like, this is not the cartoon. This is like the original comics. And so they said, Nickelodeon, like, I like this stuff, but Nickelodeon says it's too cartoony. And I was like, Nickelodeon says it's too cartoony? That's infuriating.
Right.
But like me and the editor got along, and it was just a few weeks after that he was like, we're thinking about pitching to do the My Little Pony comics. What do you think about that? And so from there, it was 8 years of like solid working all the time. And it's been 10 or 11 years since then now. And I'm still working on it here and there. So,
well, I mean, you had a great run on it. Like I say, when my wife found your table, I think they went through whatever you had in a bin and picked out like 4 pieces the first time. And, they've had me go back and buy something once or twice. And I know they've picked out a few other things. So yeah, I mean, they love it. And I just think it's fun. I mean, I don't think I've ever gotten to meet somebody who's been able to work in that kind of medium, as far as like, or that genre of comics and been able to kind of excel at it and stick with it for as long as you got to.
Yeah. There's some, every once in a while you see a guy like that, or like in the case of Ponies, it's sort of like a crew of us that were it was me, Andy Price was there all the time. Agnes Garbosco stuck around at it for a long time. Yeah. Sarah Richard, Brenda Hickey. But yeah, it was just like a crew of us, and we just sort of kept drawing, like the work just kept coming in, and they kept, expanding and doing more stuff. And we just kept working. And it wasn't until I had a studio mate of mine, like my buddy Dennis started working in the studio with us, and he was doing his work to make money, but then he was also making creator-owned books. And I was like, oh, I forgot. I'm supposed to also be making my own stuff. And so that's when I started working on Stray Dogs and the other stuff that I was working on.
So what was the inspiration for Stray Dogs? I think that kind of came out of nowhere for a lot of people, who were, they weren't looking for it, but it was something everybody really enjoyed. And I think the buzz coming off of it was fantastic. And even the people, when the covers went on sale, I mean, everybody wanted to have one. I mean, it was pretty amazing, for something like that. I mean, did you know going into it that you thought it was going to be something that special?
No, I mean, it was special to us. Like,
yeah,
we knew it was good. Like, we were making it, and we were like, this is cool, and but we didn't know that it was going to connect or that anybody would care about it. But then things kept going right for it, like when Image said they would do it, it was like, well, that is a real it sort of gives you the benefit of the doubt with new readers, where they're
Mhm.
like, well, this looks weird, but it's Image, so it's probably at least not crap, like it's probably at least a certain level of something.
Right.
Um, and then yeah, and then we did those alternate covers with the horror movie posters, and that really took off. And so it just sort of all lined up. And it was, it was during the pandemic, and we thought that was going to be a nightmare for us. Like when we came out in February of 2021, and so like we didn't even know when it was solicited if comic stores were even going to be open when
Exactly.
there wasn't a vaccine, like, so it's just like, well, how does this work? But then it just turned out that, everybody was home. They were all reading. They had stimulus money, and they just bought the crap out of Stray Dogs. So it worked out good. But I got the idea from it. I told this story before, but the quick version of it is I was watching a TV show, and it was about a serial killer. And I left the room, and when I came back, the guy had a dog. And I was just like, oh, did he kill somebody and take their dog? And my friends were like, no, that's not what happened. And then I just started thinking like, oh, it'd be cool if that's what happened though. Like this would be much cooler if he had killed somebody and taken their dog as a trophy. And then from there, it was just a matter of like, well, what's that story about? And like, from whose perspective does that story have the most impact?
Mhm.
And so, and when I realized that like, oh, if this was like a Disney movie, if this was like Oliver and Company, but with serial killers, that was when it really started, like my neurons started flaring and I started writing stuff down.
Oh, that's well, you never know where the inspiration is going to come from. That's great. Uh, but you had it all wrong, but you had it all right.
Yeah.
Um,
Most of my ideas that I've been happiest with usually come from seeing some story and going like, they did that all wrong. They should have done this,
mhm.
And so I don't know if that means I'm unoriginal or if I'm just, like if I have good instincts, or I don't know what. But
You're a good editor. I mean, you see things, you see plot elements and things that have a lot more promise than maybe what's being realized in other stories or opportunities that are out there, and you make it better. That's great. So Mikhail says he finally picked up the trade, and you made him cry.
sorry and thank you.
I forgot that. Do you have the chat? Can you see the chat on the left hand side?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I wasn't sure if I forgot to mention that before we got started. But yeah,
A lot of
Mikhail.
people watch this show though. I cannot keep up with the chat.
Yeah, the ML is the one who keyed me into what you said about me on that one podcast. That's why he just wrote Tony Two Ponies. So just saying.
Only two ponies.
Yes, Mikhail, I did bring that up with Tony when I saw him in Baltimore, and scolded him for that, and we both had a good laugh about it. So
I was never so shocked.
you figured I'd never hear that.
The shit I say about people on podcasts.
No, I had a good laugh at that. I was hoping I'd get to see you at a show sometime after he pointed that out to me. But so all right. So but so leading up to that, what you went to art school, but as a kid, did you was it you were ready? You knew comics or something in the entertainment business was definitely going to be in your future. Do you think? I mean,
Yeah.
you didn't want to be an astronaut. It was all art.
Yeah. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and my brothers and sisters my first sister's 4 years younger than me. And they each have like a match set. Like it's my sister and then my other sister are right next to each other in age, and my 2 brothers are right next to each other in age.
Okay.
So I was like an only child for 4 years, and then my parents had these other kids, and they were then just I was old enough to handle myself, and these other kids took like the majority of the attention. So I got really into drawing just as a way to sort of like occupy myself, like the kids are, they were babies at the time or whatever. And I would just draw and read comics and like, make my own little stories. And so that sort of was like not like I was escaping from anything, but it was sort of like that was my thing that I did to keep myself occupied all through growing up. Or like we'd go to, my parents would take us to church, and it seemed to go on forever. And I would just sit there and, take those cards that you're supposed to fill out how much you're giving to church, and I would just fill them up with artwork. And so, yeah, I was just constantly drawing. And my dad would like bring me home like reams of paper from work, and I would draw on those. And so it was just what I was always doing. And when I was in high school, I was a good artist. there was always somebody better than me, but so I always was sort of like the scrappy, like underdog who just was going to draw for much longer and work much harder, which is sort of still, I think, where I'm at, where I just work constantly and try my best to, you know, to not be made a fool of by, by the kid in class that's better than me.
So were you, and I understand that too. I went to art school as well, and I always had throughout high school and college, I always had one person who I always felt was better than me. But it was always good to kind of have that person to kind of push you to try harder, right? And yeah, but yeah, I get where you're coming from with that. But were comics always a part of were part of your life? I mean, knowing that, or were you just kind of drawing whatever was interesting to you?
Yeah, well, when I was a kid, I was drawing, whatever I would draw like, Star Wars and ET all the time and stuff like that. And then I had a cousin, my dad's cousin, so I guess my second cousin, and he was like that guy that could just draw whatever off of TV, like we'd sit there and watch, Saturday morning cartoons, and he would just draw them all in notebook paper and stuff. And it was like he was doing a magic trick, and he would teach me like how he was doing what he was doing. And so like I was just really fascinated by that. And so it was cartoons early on. And then when I got to be about 9-10 years old, I got into comics. A family friend gave me some comics as like because I think I'm 79. So when I was 10, it was Tim Burton's Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were Batman comics all over the place. Death in the Family trade paperback existed. I got that. I remember that being like a real pivotal early, comic. I knew Robin from TV, and then all of a sudden here he was just getting blown up, beat to death by a crowbar. And then, but the real, like when I really was like an every week comic buyer, was Jim Lee X-Men #3. I remember specifically was the one that I was just like, it was Chris Claremont's last issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea what was going on with anything, like I'd seen the X-Men characters probably on Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. But beyond that, it was just this amazing artwork that was just so startling. And the cover was like this Danger Room scene where it's like Colossus and Wolverine and
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so like, I just remember like poring over that thing over and over again. And I was just like, well, I want to come back to this place tomorrow and get the next one of these. And so I would just go to the comic store whenever. I didn't know when they came out. I would just go in there and wait to find something new. And that was sort of my, like my most, when I was like a sponge, like I was absorbing the most at that time. It was the time when
it was your formative years.
Well, there it is. Thank you.
Yeah, I get it. So,
I'm a writer.
No, I've done these a few times. So, but what part of the country were you in? Where did you grow up?
So at that time, I was in Colorado. I was born in Baltimore, and then when I was 10, my folks moved us to Colorado. And we spent a lot of time in Nebraska, which is where they're from. And then I moved to South Dakota when I got out of high school or out of college for a job. And I lived there for 6 years. And then I've been in LA ever since then. So I've sort of slowly worked my way across the country with a little back and forth here and there.
Mm.
But yeah, it was a shop called, I think, Heroes and Dragons in the Citadel Mall was where I was first buying comics. And then they had a downtown Colorado Springs location. And then, hey, Randy. And then I ended up working at a shop called Bargain Comics that's now called Escape Velocity Comics. And the same guy that worked with me then is one of the managers now. And it's owned by this couple named Doug and Medea, who also run Terry Moore's website.
Sweet. So Creative Keep said that they got to meet you at a free comic book day in LA, Golden Apple Comics, and they say you're very approachable and you put up with all of their annoying questions.
I'm going to Golden Apple warehouse tomorrow to sign a bunch of local mans.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
That is awesome. And he says you'll be at the Comic Bug in Culver City on Wednesday.
That's correct. Yeah, I'm going to be all over LA this week.
That's good. As part of the PR blitz.
Yeah, I'm doing my best to, like comic book readers are like the end product, but the retailers are really the ones who are sort of my customers. Whereas, like they buy the comics and then from there it's up to them to sell them. And so I'm sort of maintaining relationships with all these guys and ladies who order my comics all the time. So I'm going to help as many of them sell my books as I possibly can this week, within driving distance.
Right. Yeah, I never really thought about it like that, because when I think of writers or artists, you always see them interacting with the fans at cons and everything. But when you think about it from a business perspective, it really is that point of sale that is the most, after maybe your publisher, is the most important cog in the whole wheel, right? Because if they're not buying your books to resell, you don't have an audience at all. So wow,
There's
I don't know.
definitely something
Never occurred to me before. Revolutionary for me.
I hadn't thought about it too much before I started doing books at Image because, I don't make any extra money off of My Little Pony after I draw it.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's a matter of like the more of my comic you order and sell, the better I do. There was definitely more incentive for me to get out there and make sure that I'm doing as much as I possibly can. I mean, I was always friends with all the retailers, but it's definitely a different story when it's your books.
I mean, do the publishers kind of encourage you to get out, saying it's all up to you? The amount of effort you put in it post production, the better the things might turn out for you.
No, I mean, Image just sort of lets you do your thing. I mean, I think they are appreciative when we do, and they definitely, like I would post stuff about the signing tour, and they'll sort of like help me promote it and stuff like that. But Image, until it's trade paperback time, until it's collections, they sort of make the same money on my book whether or not it sells or not. Like they make the same. They just have a flat fee.
Yeah.
So they are sort of just like you. Everybody has to figure out their own way to do it, and my way, just the same way as like going into the studio and drawing until I can hardly stay awake anymore. The hustling to sell them is also, I guess, my way.
Right.
We try and do our best to promote them, and then afterwards go around and make sure shops have it's as easy as possible for the shops to sell stuff.
Oh, that's interesting. It kind of mirrors. I was talking to you earlier about the show that I'm putting on, and I'm thinking about like how do you work with the exhibitors that are coming out, and most cons are kind of that way too, right? They're going to help you. They're going to put you in a position where you can become successful, and then it's really up to you. They're pretty much hands off after that. I'm not going to make any more money from selling you a table or whatnot. I'm giving you the opportunity to do well when you sit down in front of your audience, and you have to pre-market it and have a nice looking display or whatever to get people to come up to you. But it's something that's been on my mind a lot. It's like, what can that venue do more for those people who are working with you, or taking the chance to sit down at your show? What more can you do for them to kind of make, to either guarantee them more people through the door or more people to step up to their table, so trying to be less passive, more engaged with those people who are taking that opportunity, right? I mean, because I think that most show owners would probably just be like, my goal is to get exhibitors and get foot traffic through the door, and then you're all on your own. After that, I just hope the fire marshals don't show up, right? I don't want to do that. So that's why I was curious, like, do they encourage? Because I would think as somebody who's financially tied to you with a product, I would be encouraging you to go out to as many signings as you could potentially do, and but yeah, I guess I can understand why they've got a lot of other books to worry about after they get yours kind of done, so it's probably not first on their mind.
Yeah, like I said, they're not specifically hounding me to go do stuff, but I think they're happy that I am.
Mm-hmm.
They seem into it.
So you've spent a lifetime collecting books, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
That's we commented on that earlier. So this is Tony says this is his second interview with this bookshelf behind him, and he is at home. He is not at. Somebody said he might be at a Borders bookstore or something. He is not. He is definitely in his own home with that layout. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's I have my garage converted into a studio workspace, and like basically all pandemic I've been working inside my house.
Mhm.
This new place I bought, and then before that, in the place I was renting. And so I've basically, this is like going to be my dream workspace. I think, I'm going to have I've got all my books here, and I'll have my desks, and I can just come out here and be sort of separate from my house, have that be a place where I chill, and have out here be a place that I work. So I like to have all my stuff at hand, so I can, just in case I need to see, Gotham Central Volume 3, like immediately, I have it right there.
Right. And
With
there isn't a car in front of you, right? So all the cars are outside the
No,
garage.
I had them drywall over that door. I'm not, I've got street parking. Okay. And if
Wow.
worst comes to worst, I can knock out a wall and put a driveway in the backyard. Thought
Mhm.
about doing that, but I'm okay. I think I'm okay right now. Unless everybody keeps talking about how they're stealing catalytic converters. I feel like if that starts happening, then maybe I'll worry about it, but
Right.
knock
Yeah.
on.
The things people will steal these days is kind of crazy.
Yeah. We're
You read
living
a
in
lot
Mad
about
Max times.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about Local Man a little bit? So was it something you saw on television that prompted this eureka moment that brought you to this storyline?
No, this came from talking to Tim Seeley, who's my co-creator on it. We were at a convention, and I was sitting right next to Norm Rapman, who was an
Mhm.
inker for Image Comics, great guy. And he brought a page of Brigade Number 1 with him, and it was as if he had brought the Dead Sea Scrolls or something. Like, I was just like, oh my, because Tim and I are both around the same age, and we're both like unironic Image comic fans. Like,
Mhm.
we love those books, for what they are, and for sort of like the promise, what they didn't actually end up becoming, but so just like the idea of them, the promise of them, and just like the energy of them. Like, we'd sort of bonded over being into that. Um, and so we we had this page of Brigade, which was Brant Michaels on his very first job ever. He had done like layout work and sort of like studio work for Rob, but his first published stuff, he had drawn all the characters, and then it wasn't quite there yet. So Rob Liefeld drew all the heads over top. And so this piece that Norm had, you could actually lift up the Rob Liefeld heads and see the original heads underneath. It was like an original art treasure, like, and I don't know what, like what the dollar amount of that is, but it's like a grail piece for me. I was like, listen, whenever you're ready to sell that, just tell me any number, like, I was just so fascinated with it and so happy to be able to see it. It was like seeing history, for me, for a specific age group, for a
Yeah.
specific type of guy. It was, and so I brought Tim over, and we sort of geeked out about it. And then that was right before COVID. And then during COVID, we sort of just started talking back and forth about like, what could we do to sort of do something that captured some of what we love about like the 90s Image stuff, do a story that was sort of based in 90s Image, but not be like a pastiche or a parody or anything like that. What would be a way to do that? And so Tim's original pitch to me was, let's do like a 90s Image book crossed with a 90s Vertigo book. And what it ended up working out to be in was like a 90s Image book that's also sort of like a crime noir book.
Mhm.
And so what we ended up with, this book, Local Man, comes out this Wednesday. And we sort of kept it in the in the style of the original Image comics, like in the style of Youngblood #1. The front of it is this, and it's a story about a guy that used to be a superhero that moves back to his hometown and is sort of like canceled and disgraced and has to move back in with his parents. And so it's sort of like this Midwestern, like quiet, tonal, thinky comic. And then on the flip side of it is when he was a superhero, in the 90s. And so we sort of get to see, where this guy's coming from, and we sort of see things. There's a mystery at the center of it, and we sort of see like what leads up to this mystery. He's not allowed to be a superhero anymore. So what's he going to do in the middle of nowhere? And then all of a sudden people start dying, and he has to figure out, what's happening.
Well, that's I have not picked it up, but that sounds pretty darn interesting. I like that.
Yeah. It comes out this Wednesday. That's what I'm going to be running around promoting. And Tim drew the superhero side of it, and I drew in a very My Little Pony style, the non-superhero side of it. Is there a way? Is it shiny? It's shiny.
That's a little bit. That's not too bad. Yeah, I had. I didn't. I guess I should have put those two together. I think on the images. That's the one on the left is the cover you were showing, and then this is the back cover image, right?
Yeah, and so we also did B cover. I'm not sure if it was a good idea or not, but there's a B cover that's like a photo cover where the image comic that he showed up in is in like a photograph, and then the back cover of every book is just that cover, but like it says Local Man. So I don't know. Maybe I cannibalized some of my B cover sales by just giving them that image for free. But we'll see. But then for the following issues, we got some of our favorite like 90s superhero artists to do, or like image artists specifically to do the B covers and the back covers. So this is issue 2. It's Todd Knock with a Shadowhawk appearance, and also Todd Knock's own character bootleg from my favorite comic, New Men. And then that's some Marat Michaels foil cover for issue 1, and then the Brett Booth variant cover for issue 3. So we sort of played 90s comics fantasy baseball camp with, our favorite guys, and sort of got to create this world that never existed, but looks like it could have existed right alongside, Brigade and Wildcats and stuff like that.
No, that's really, really cool. And so they loved it. They loved the idea as far as taking it on as a publisher with you guys. And
yeah, thank goodness. We sent off the pitch, and we were just like, well, if Image doesn't want to do this, it's going to be real obvious that it was supposed to be an Image comic anywhere else. We couldn't like shave the serial numbers off and make it like the Dark Horse. It's not going to be like, remember Comics Greatest World? It's like the man from AX and Vortex and Barbed Wire, but what was happening while those books were going on. It was obviously an Image comic. Like, it was Image Comics was what inspired it. So we're real happy that it's an Image comic book, because it just sort of makes everything fit really nicely. It fits.
So what's the first arc? How many issues do you have kind of set up for that?
So the first arc is 5 issues.
Okay.
And then hopefully we continue to go on from there. It's creator owned, so if it's a disaster by issue 4, we'll sort of wrap things up nice and tidy, and if it takes off, then we'll keep rolling.
Mm-hmm.
So but yeah, we have a lot of ideas for sort of like what this world is and how it fits into actual Image Comics universe, and sort of like what the other mysteries are, and what this guy he starts off in this one place and sort of where he's headed and what he's becoming. So yeah, we're excited to really get in there and mess with it. I'm finishing the 3rd issue right now, and then right on to 4 is written, and Tim's part of 4 is drawn, and then we're writing issue 5 right now too. So it's all happening. It's all, Brad Simpson, the colorist, is sending me colors on issue 3 as I got a batch today. So we're deep in the middle of production on it. It's nice.
Yeah, and I knew I had some originals. I forgot about that. So is everything traditional? What, as far as the work that's going into it, or is it a mix, hybrid?
It's not even a hybrid. It's the worst possible.
Oh no.
For a comic art fans audience, this is not the answer you want to hear, but yeah, it's all Procreate.
Yeah.
I think some of Tim's stuff he's drawing on paper, because he said he was just having so much fun with it. And I am also having fun, but like I said, I was drawing in my house for the whole pandemic. So I sort of had to figure out, how to, like, what my setup was going to be. And my drawing table has been in someone else's garage for going on 2 years now. I'm about to go free it out of there, but I've just been on iPad and Sketchboard Pro and Procreate for the past couple of years. So that is what this is. Every once in a while, I'll break out a drawing board so I can do a cover on paper, but all my interior stuff for the past few years has been Procreate.
Right, because most of the Stray Dogs work was digital, except the covers were traditional. Is that correct?
Yeah, and foolishly, after when we had that big sale of all those covers, we were really kicking ourselves, because about half of those original series covers we did digital too, because it was just coming so fast. Like, it was like they were just like, we need a second printing cover right now, and so it was just like, oh, we had to knock it out really quickly. But yeah, so half of those covers that we could have been selling, but those were digital too. But yeah, it's just sort of more comfortable for this book specifically, where it's sort of like a photo reference style anyway. I'm working from photos, and Procreate and digital tools make it so simple to do that. It's almost like it would be a whole other layer of, I would have to get stronger glasses to lightbox everything, or to
Right. So I mean, I don't think I've really ever asked anyone this, but so how do you feel about not having the originals to sell? I mean, does the benefit of the speed and the extra time it gives you in life doing work digitally, is that more rewarding than the potential financial reward from working traditional?
um I mean, I still, obviously I wish I still had it, because I still do stuff traditionally when I think it's like we're doing Gargoyles covers, me and Trish,
Yeah.
for Nick at Dynamite. And those ones we're doing on paper, for the most part. Like, a few of them, again, like if it's scheduled and it's like we got to crank this out, then they'll end up being digital. Um, but when I can, I'm trying to do as much on paper as I can, just because you like to have something. It's not like a main part of my business, but it is a nice supplement.
Hmm.
So yeah, I would love to have it, but next time I see you in person, I'll show you like the process for making these pages, and it's just, when you see it, you're just like, oh, it would be a nightmare to do that on paper.
Right. No, I'd like to see that. I mean, that's I really find that stuff interesting, and I feel I've talked to a lot of artists about the switch, and so there's a lot of reasons. I talked to some guys who've gone digital. They're just like, it gives me more time to hang out with my family. If that's
Mhm.
your priority, then I get it. You're right though. It does make original art collectors a little sad, when we see it, but it makes us cherish the original pieces that do become available from artists like yourself, or others that are switched to being digital. I mean, Brian Bolland switched to digital years ago,
Years
right?
ago, yeah.
You just can't get anything at all from him unless it's pay through the nose, or it's just a prelim. So we can lament the times we're in and the direction things are going, but I
But
think people
also, it makes original art feel more special to me now too. Like Nick Dragata doing all of his stuff digitally, and
Mhm.
then he does the covers on paper. It makes those covers, like, I think his art would always be valued, but if there were, thousands of East of West pages out there, would it, like, those covers, it's real special if you have one of those.
Right, right. No, I agree. I mean, I, yeah. I mean, there's nothing we can do about it as fans of the medium, and we just have to kind of roll with it and uh, get what we can get. I think that, because like if you don't have originals, I mean, what are you bringing to shows when you need to talk about? You bring in books and things that you can sign, I assume.
Yeah, well, yeah, since Stray Dogs, and since I started having more creator-owned stuff, I did a book called Time Shopper too, with
Mhm.
my buddy Christian Misi. And so I have like a pretty robust selection of like trades and issues and stuff to sell. But I still do have, I've got a ton of pages and covers and stuff that I've done traditionally. So I'll still have like for original art shoppers, I've always got a box of stuff there, and it goes from reasonably priced to aspirationally priced.
I've seen on your website. I think everything's pretty reasonably priced. Yeah, as far as
I,
and I've seen you set up at a few places. I mean, you've got Star Wars art too in the
yeah,
box typically.
yeah, that was I was talking to somebody on a plane yesterday, and they asked me what I did, and I told them what I drew, and when I said Star Wars, they were like, "Wow!" And I was like, "It was really a freeing thing to do, draw Star Wars, because it was sort of like when people say like, what would you want to do if you could draw anything, it would be Star Wars."
Hmm.
And so having done that, and I did like 5 issues of it and a bunch of covers, the kids one, but like that's fine. I draw kids comics.
Right.
Uh, but it's just sort of like after that, there's no, like, I can just make my own stuff from here on out and be completely content, like honestly completely content, and not have to chase any gigs, or if I keep doing okay making my own stuff, I'd be more than content to just do that for the rest of my life, because I sort of got my one, you know uh like the one comic book that I would have killed to draw. I didn't have to kill anybody. I just asked somebody at IDW at lunch
and they gave it to you.
And they said, okay. I was like, that was much easier than if you knew the like how much I built this up in my head, you would have made it a little harder on me.
Hey, back to that. Cosray asked a pretty good question, and because I know there's some artists that do this, isn't there the temptation to do the roughs or first pass pencils digitally, and then maybe printing those out and then inking those, physically on paper? Because guys like
Yeah.
Sean Phillips, I think, works in that way. He does all of his roughs digitally, prints them out on board, and then inks that. I mean, again, it makes something that we're not used to, right? Because there's no pencils on the board. There's just this, blue lined print that you can tell was done on a computer, but then he traditionally inks it. So,
yeah, that's the way I've been doing my stuff for basically the whole time I've been working professionally. Like my very first pony pages were blue line, and then inks over that. So yeah, when I work traditionally, even when I work traditionally, it's a little bit digital. But it is just that much faster to not stop and print it out. And I'm only 43 years old, but I work constantly, and so my eyesight is not what it used to be, and so like I have to put reading glasses on now when I'm drawing pages traditionally, and so working digitally, I can just zoom all the way in. We were
right.
talking, me and some other artists were talking about, like, I wonder if that thing where older artists sort of get a little wobbly, like I wonder if that goes away in a world where you can zoom all the way in like that, or do we all just start drawing like every tiny detail in a thing, and everything turns into like a big gray mess? We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, we had when I did that original art meetup, Adam Kubert he showed up, and he brought the originals that he's been working on, and they're like 20 by 30, and so he's actually working larger because he feels like it gives him more freedom to add more details, and he's of an age where that his eyesight might be a little bit different, but he said that he just felt more comfortable working like that it just gave him that freedom to feel a little bit more I don't know, I guess in control of the level of work and detail that he was putting in the pieces. And and so it's in a weird way, I guess it's kind of like traditional, because like you just said, you can zoom into a panel and pretty much have it any size you want on your tablet and just go to town on it. And so it's the same kind of thing, but different. Huh. Well, that's the funny thing he said was that when he works at that size, he actually draws on a small drawing board, right? So he's literally rolling up the bottom when he's working on the top, and then when he's working on the bottom, he's rolling up the top. So he keeps going back and forth. I was like, you think you need a big board to work on? So you don't have to keep going back and forth. That's like the antithesis of the way you're working, where you're able to zoom in and stuff.
Yeah.
He's like got to turn a crank to kind of get it.
That's your guy. He's really committed to the original art market right then.
Right, exactly.
He's sitting there rolling up pages.
I know. I was just trying to picture him doing that, and I just thought, wow, that's got to be a sight to see. But you're right. You got to be committed to the size and things. So, well, I mean, but that's interesting. I think a lot of any artists that have worked in the 21st century have had to have been experimenting, with non-traditional means one way or another. I mean, you just can't help but be influenced in some way to want to at least experiment with digital, just to see if it can improve any part of your workflow.
Yeah, well, I mean, I started working on a Cintiq. I mean, since college, I've been using like the Wacom, like the bamboo tablets,
Yeah.
And then I started working on a Cintiq probably in like 2013, 2012 or so. Like when I started working on ponies, I had enough money coming in that I splurged and got one of those, and that was cool. But you're still sort of like trapped to a desk. And then when the iPad Pro came out, like a lot of comics pros were saying like, this isn't going to work. It doesn't have the right tools and stuff. But I went and got it, and I was just like, well, let me see what it is, And at the time, I was like, well, maybe it doesn't work for them because they're doing like super detailed stuff. But I was just drawing ponies, and the lines on a pony image, at the time I was working in a studio with Chris Burnham, and he would put more lines in one panel than I would put in a whole issue of My Little Pony, So at the time it was enough for me to work with. And I just sort of started then, like pretty early on iPad Pro days. I just started working in that. And then as I went on, it was like, well, what else can this thing do? And what other tricks can it do? And what can you do with this? And so, I would do a lot of storyboard work, and a lot of storyboards that they would have, like these agencies I would be working for would be like, sometimes they would just send me photos and just say like, give us a storyboard that's this exact photo, and so then you're just tracing, like doing an illustration based on that photo, but you're just tracing it. But because I had, I knew how to ink, and I knew like, textures and like how to make something look like it's not just like a coloring book or like an airline pamphlet. I was sort of using what I'd picked up just working, and also what I picked up, reading comics my whole life and looking at like Al Williamson and what guys like Sean Phillips or Michael Lark would do, using photo reference, but sort of making it, look stylish and artistic. And so that was a style that I picked up doing that on my iPad. And then I was just like, I wonder if I could just do a comic like this. And so then it's, then you're taking your own photos and doing all that stuff and putting it together yourself. So that's what Local Man sort of came out of. This is like, I wonder if I can do this. And then if I can, then I'm sort of untethered by anything. Like I can do realistic stuff. I can do cartoony stuff. I can write it. I can draw it. I can, so much of making comics is sort of like like the collaboration part of it is like, all right, this person does this thing and this person does this thing, but you're not like, you can be completely free if you can do all of it. And so I sort of feel like I'm inching closer to being able to just do all of it.
Coloring too?
I can't color. I don't like, I color all the covers that I do. But it is the part I like having done it. I hate doing it, like I like the result. I hate the work of it. It's the most tedious for me.
Mm-hmm. So let's see. Johnny had a question. Any new projects with you and Trish?
Yeah, me and Trish Forstner from Stray Dogs are working on a thing. It's probably about a year off still, but it's going to be an image book, and it will not surprise fans of Stray Dogs. But we're sort of going to be playing in that same type of world, that same type of universe. So if you like things that are cute and heartbreaking and scary, then that's what we're doing.
That's a particular audience set for sure.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's something that I'm so happy. Like, I'm happy for a lot of reasons that Stray Dogs works, but I've sort of always had this, since I draw cartoony, but I also like the things that I like are things that I like. Like I love horror movies, and I love like, if I go to a movie and it just devastates me, like if it's just like a drama and it just ruins my life, that I'm happiest then, like I'm just like that. I've really felt something, like, so I'm so happy that Stray Dogs worked in being a cute thing that made people feel things, and so hopefully we're doing more of that, and hopefully it works in a similar way on people.
Well, that's exciting. Randy had a question. I know you already kind of talked about how you got into the pony universe, but what's it like being embraced by a culture, of a fan base that and that sees you as as somebody who's an important contributor to their fandom, on something as big as ponies. I mean, it's not turtles, but it's actually in some ways today it's bigger than turtles, right? So
yeah, and to those people, yeah, to those people, it's the biggest thing ever, like I sort of liken it to. I was talking about this I was on a podcast earlier today with Jen King from Space Cadets Comics. Mm-hmm. And I liken it to sort of like early days Star Trek conventions, where did I say that on here or did I say that on there?
Well, you mentioned you used that reference, but I don't think in this context though.
But it's like these people who like that's their favorite thing ever. It's the biggest thing in the world to them, and whatever else they're into, like they're super crazy about My Little Pony. And so to get that job and just all of a sudden be in the middle of this whole, like at the time it was the height of the whatever the moment or the fandom or whatever you want to call it. And so it was like we would just get invited to these conventions and go from being just like a normal person to being, like Jim Lee or something.
There's a line at your table.
Yeah, there's legit a line at our table. We made more money than we ever thought was even a possibility at these things. It was just like, it was shocking, but and also just sort of like one of these dumb luck things where it's just like, well, anybody else that found themselves in this scenario could have had this same thing happen to them. But it was sort of also that hustle where, you know, I got that job by drawing samples really quickly, and then I just hustled and worked, and I finished one issue, and they were like, hey, this other guy flaked, can you do the next one? And I would say, yeah, you know, like I just worked constantly on it. So it was a sort of like opportunity meets like output or whatever you want, you know, like hard work meets opportunities scenario. But the opportunity was extraordinary. You know, it was like catching a shooting star while it was exploding or
Right.
whatever.
No, it's on the TV every morning here. You know, my office is outside of the house, and every morning I'll you know, come in to get another cup of tea or whatever. And when as soon as the girls are up, you know, they're 20 and 18, but My Little Pony is what they're waking up to while they're having their orange juice and whatever, because they still love it, you know. And at night it's like Star Trek Below Decks or something like that. But mornings are My Little Pony.
Well, when the girls watch this on the replay, they'll be delighted to hear that I spent the weekend fine dining and doing like a private karaoke room with Princess Celestia herself. It was very exciting.
Oh man. Well, yes, that would definitely make their night for
That's
sure.
a real celebrity.
That is exactly. Well, that's cool, man. I mean, that I don't know. I think that those kind of opportunities don't come around too often for creators, and for you to be like on the spot and you're able to pick up where somebody else maybe wasn't doing a good enough job, and then run with it for 8 years straight. That's impressive.
Well, I mean, because the brony phenomenon and like and people being like, are they perverts? Like, what is going on with this? Like that all existed when the comics came out, and I had friends and you know, like other people would be like, are you sure about this? You know, and I was like, I think I'm sure about it. You know, like I think I'm just gonna see what happens here. And you know, I made a for a comic book artist doing IDW comics for 8 years, I made an incredible living, you know? So it was just sort of like, it was one of the most fortunate things that could have happened to me at the time when it happened. So it was, you know, very appreciative of that whole thing.
Well, and Johnny mentioned here as well. He said that surprisingly, it's a great comic and great stories and character development. And the thing is, when I watch it, you know, because we usually have a TV on while reading. We're not the family that sits and talks together. Well, we talk about what we're watching, and I get into it. I hate to say it. I mean, and people have joked about it in the past too, but it's true. I mean, they are actually pretty darn good stories. At the end of the day, they're engaging. The characters are interesting, and I may not be able to remember half of their names while I'm watching it, but I'm at least, you know, I ignore a lot of the stuff that they watch, but Ponies at least is always kind of, at least I'm engaged enough that I'm interested. So
it's one of the things I was really glad about when I got this, because I'd seen like one episode of it when I got the job, and I just assumed it was going to be like, you know, Blue's Clues or something. I was just like, is this going to be just a nightmare? Am I going to watch this thing over and over again, and it's going to be, you know, four babies? But yeah, it's, you know, it's engaging and it's fun and, you know, not super annoying.
Well, that's awesome. Can you see yourself going back to something like that, or now that you've done Stray Dogs and Local Man, do you know, is that something that you feel like you could go back to, or do you feel really more comfortable now doing your own projects, or, you know, ones where you're, you know, yeah, just your own IPs? I mean, how do you look at your next, you know, 10 years in the business?
Well, like I said, I bought this house, so I'm definitely going to be working for other people, you know, at least some of the time. And like I said, I loved working on those ponies. Like it was a great thing for me. So I'm always sort of I just wrote a thing for like a 40th anniversary of My Little Pony thing that they're doing, and I've been writing for the Generation 5 cartoon, the Netflix cartoon.
Okay.
It's on right now. So I always sort of have a toe in My Little Pony. I did a bunch of artwork for a My Little Pony game recently, and so yeah, I've always got my toe in that pool still.
That's great. RG says you've come a long way from having to do $3 sketches to pay the rent.
For God's sake!
If $3 sketches pay the rent, I don't want to know where you were living at that time. But You got to start somewhere, right, Tony?
Yeah, that was I was living in LA and I didn't have I just had no money and I went on the internet and I said, I'll do anything you want. I'll sketch anything you want for $3. And I ended up with like 1,000 of them or something. And
I guess
so
that would pay the rent then for that month.
yeah, for that, I think it covered like 2 months. And then I continued to draw those son of a bitchin' things for like the next 3 years, just trying to trying to clear that out.
Oh man, well, yeah, you never know what you're going to get into when you do commissions. But so as far as because we want to talk about you as a collector as well. But
Yes.
you probably had a lot of interesting experience at shows and bumping into other artists and things. I mean, give me a few interesting experiences that you can share, as far as just like, getting either to meet your heroes or creators that you never thought you were going to get the opportunity to meet, that has happened to some of the shows you've been to.
Well, I mean, I met a lot of the guys like that I mentioned that I was excited to have do local man stuff, doing conventions, because so many of those guys, that were sort of like 90s superstars lived in LA, or in like, La Jolla or Anaheim area, Extreme and Wildstorm, Top Cow, like all those guys were sort of out here working in those studios. And so maybe all of the people that did covers for us I met at conventions, and that was always super exciting to me, and sort of hard to it's hard to explain to somebody. I mean, you go up and you talk to people whose art you love, and I always have a hard time articulating why it is that I love a thing, or what it is that I because it's such a personal thing to me. But like I met Todd Knock, I can't remember what con it was at, but he's at most of the same cons that I'm at out here, whether it be like Long Beach Comic-Con or Ontario Revolution or LA Comic-Con. Like I see him all the time, and his wife Dawn, and I would go up to him, or like I don't know if we're gonna talk about it, but I've got a couple pages by this guy Trent Kaniga, who did this book Creed, and that was so inspirational to me when I was a kid. And he lived out here when I first moved out here, and I saw him at a convention. I'm not good at, if I love somebody too much, I sort of just hang back, and I don't want to ruin it for myself. Remember in Good Will Hunting when he said, like, maybe you're perfect right now, maybe you don't want to ruin that,
Right.
Like I just the way I feel about a person's thing, I don't want to have there be a situation where it's just like I embarrass myself or they're a dick to me or anything. So I'm just sort of like, I sort of hold the relationship I have to these people's art so precious that I do my best to make them know that I appreciate them. But in the case of this guy, Trent Kaniga, I was able to like go up to him and say like, hey man, you probably, when you were 15 years old making comics, you probably didn't know that, like every other 15-year-old in the world, or at the time, I think I was like 14. And it was just like, somebody was just like, hey, you can do this, like this guy who's your age is out here making comics. Or when I hear that like Joe Madureira was 16 working at Marvel,
right?
You're just like, what? that means you can do it, And so I was hugely inspired by this guy, and he was cartoony, and he was in Wizard magazine. It seemed like every week.
He was, yeah.
So
great work. I had, it's funny because I haven't really. There isn't a lot of his work out there. I don't believe. I think if
I heard him tell a story in an interview one time where he said he went out to San Diego Comic-Con when Creed Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had just come out, and he didn't have enough money to get back home, so he sold all the pages of Creed Ninja Turtles for basically just for gas money, just like $10 here, $5 here, so that he could get home.
Well, there's a lot of Trent fans in the audience. So that's good.
Oh, good. Yeah, I was able to find these two. That cover is from the back of a Combo magazine, which was like I don't know if it was Topps or Beckett or some sort of collector type magazine that came out because Wizard was doing so well. There was like Hero Illustrated, and there was Combo and a few other ones. So that was a back cover to that. Well, I cannot find a physical copy of the magazine that it was on for sure.
Well, knowing it's published is half the battle.
That matters to me. Absolutely. I'm a big published guy.
I was just gonna say, so you're more into the published art than getting a commission from one of the artists that you know.
Yeah, as a like being a professional myself, like I just like the process of it and sort of like seeing a thing that's published and thinking about like where they were when they were making that and sort of what went into it and what it became, like being able to look at it and see like, oh, they did this, or like, they used this, like that's half of the enjoyment for me, not just besides just owning a thing by an artist that I like, but actually seeing how they made it and thinking about where they made it and like who was there and what was going on at the time, like all of that. And also having done so many commissions myself, I feel like like I have a like I'm antagonistic about them. I'm just like like if I asked one of my favorites to do a commission, I'd be like, look, I'm very sorry, I know I know you have a lot to do in your life. This way it's just like, you already did this, let me just give you some money for it, or give somebody else some money that bought it from you for $10 when you're trying to get home from Comic-Con.
Right. So when you get a piece of art, you actually do find yourself really studying it to kind of get a feel
Yeah.
for what was in the head of the penciler and inker when they were doing the work.
Yeah, I just like getting real close to it and feeling it and touching it and sort of just like, not like a weirdo, but like I just like to be able to sort of really inspect it. I think that's why we like artist editions, because
Mhm.
it's like a collection of all the stuff we could never track down and put together ourselves. I'm sure people that have tracked them down and put them together. But
Not, yeah, you figured CAF is only a small percentages, of the artwork that's out there. So I think Scott Doonbeer has like the inside track on where all the good stuff is, because so much of the stuff that you end up seeing in those artist editions by IDW, I've never seen in person, and as much as I'd like to think I know who a lot of some of the collectors are, I mean, really, I don't. I mean, there's just so many collectors that just like to keep things private, right? And I think
yeah,
it's CAF is successful because there's a certain segment of the hobby that likes to show off what they and share what they've owned, but there's far more people that don't, and that's okay. I mean,
I mean,
it isn't for everybody, but
I just am busy. I hadn't put up stuff on CAF in years until we had this interview lined up, and then I was like, oh no, I better hurry up. And so I think I posted like 50 some new pages before I left for that pony show this weekend, just to get ready for this.
uh, yeah, I see the creative Keith was saying it, because usually I do it when I have an interview with an artist. We do an art sale after. There are no art sales tonight, everybody. No Stray Dogs art coming your way.
You can go to Felix's site. We still have some Stray Dogs pages for sale over there.
I thought you did. I was going to ask you that because I forgot to look recently, but I felt like a few months ago that there were still a few things up there.
Yeah, Felix has all the Stray Dog stuff, and then everything else, except I haven't put up new stuff in a little bit, but I have original art for sale on my site on TonyFleece.com.
Is because I went through there earlier. I mean, you got things separated by, like, you have covers and then interiors and things. I'm not on the right. No, I'm not on the site right now. But yeah, I was looking. I wasn't doing any shopping, but I always, if I see something I think my daughters will like, I always like to point something out. I did. There was one cover on there you had priced at $600. I thought, well, I might show that to Gwen because she might be interested.
Nice. Well, please do, by all means.
There you go. And Collins, who's my writer on CAF, and he works at Wicked Comic Con too. Is there? I forget what he does. He'll remind me. He handles all their media, I think, stuff. But he says he's got 2 of your Star Wars pages that aren't uploaded into his gallery yet. For shame, Colin.
Come on, Colin. I feel your pain, buddy. I understand.
Yeah, but but we all know how that goes. I've probably got about 30 or 40 scans that I've done that I haven't posted to CAF. But at least I got them scanned. I'm ready to go, but it takes time.
That is half the battle. Michael Callahan, the original art from Micro Series #2, was sold 10 years ago. I don't know where it's gotten off to.
Well, that's
there
you go, Michael. Sorry to you. It's out there somewhere. It could come back. And and that's funny though. Like I get to have that. I get to share the original art hobby with my family thanks to artwork like ponies or turtles. We have some turtles art too, and a few other things. I mean, and Michael mentioning his wife. I mean, not all the things that we bring into the house are things that we could hang on the wall or things that that our family would be proud to know that dad or mom owns. But everybody can get into My Little Ponies, and it's something, or those types of characters, and you can actually share this thing that really is a wonderful hobby to be in with your family. I mean, I appreciate the fact that there's that kind of artwork around, because not many like my wife likes Captain America, right? So she likes seeing that artwork, but not many other pieces of art would mean a whole lot to her other than ponies or turtles or things that maybe just give her joy, like most comic book artwork would. So yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, you can't do that. Many other hobbies, collecting statues. Yeah, nobody's gonna, family's not gonna care about that. They're just gonna look good on your bookshelf. But art, you can actually appreciate as a family.
Yeah, I definitely love having some of these that we're gonna see tonight hanging up in my house. It's a, it's a one of the things about being a comic artist is that, like, most of the comic artists that I know have one or two pieces of original art, and you get to go over and see like what is really special to them. So it's sort of like your it's like your profile pic in your own house. Like you come in
Right.
and sort of get to learn a little bit about me by what makes it onto the wall.
Well, why don't we look at some of the collected art? You gave me 16 pieces to look at tonight, and I kept them in the order that you gave them to me, and that's
Feel
so
free to mix them up. I don't care, but we
no,
get them.
no. Somebody who I've always admired, and I think most people, whether they knew it or they didn't, Drew Struzan is always going to be an incredible influence on I think most creators, but just in film and movie posters, and as a kind of a visionary. I mean, he's been at the top of his game, or for so long. I mean, I know he's got his own, the gallery in Texas now, Galactic Gallery, but the work that he's done is just going to live on forever. I mean, everybody knows his work, whether they know him or not.
Oh, for sure. And that, I mean, I've loved it. Like, I think I obviously had seen his work my whole life, but I realized I was looking at his work either on the Hook poster, or it might have not been until like the special editions, the Star Wars special editions, when I was just like, oh, that guy is the same guy, the guy that does this specific thing. And you could always tell because it would be like the white pencil. Like that's what I would notice in his stuff. He's sort of like the colorist Dean White, I think, does a version of that when he colors comics, where he sort of does a little pencil over top, and you sort of get a little texture that other more like airbrushier artists didn't do. His Drew Struzan stuff always had like a grit to it. But this piece was a bit of a splurge, and I did get it from his gallery. And I didn't even know it existed because this is the movie poster comp for the movie Balto. But Drew Struzan did not do the poster for the movie Balto, so I had no idea this was even a thing. But I stumbled upon it when I was just sort of like cruising around online, and it happened to be right when Stray Dogs was really happening, and Balto was one of the sort of like visual inspirations for Stray Dogs in a big way. Like I sent everybody on the team a copy of Balto on DVD, and then I sent them the Brian K. Vaughan book about Pride of Baghdad, and then I also sent the colorist Brad Simpson. I sent him an Andrew Wyeth book, and he was like, "Yeah, I fucking know who Andrew Wyeth is." But yeah, Balto was like a real inspiration, and I had sort of looked around to see if there was artwork out there, and there were some. You could get some storyboards, like somebody had like parceled apart storyboards, and they were okay, but there wasn't anything that was like, that's the thing I would want. And then I stumbled upon this thing, and it was when I had Stray Dogs money, and I was just like, oh geez, like I need to have that. And so, and it wasn't a nightmare as far as expenses go, but it was definitely more than I think it's probably the most I paid for anything. But I'm very happy to have it. Although I do not have it right now because it's been with Steve Wyatt for about a year. He's just been slowly framing it for me. So Steve, if you're out there, please bring this back to me so I can put it up in my house.
Well, I know that Steve does a phenomenal job with framing. So when you do get it back, it's going to be, I'm sure, incredibly impressive. He puts a lot of care into his work. I've seen pieces that he's done before. Back in the Big Wow days,
Yeah.
He would bring stuff to the show, and so you get to see some of his stuff. But wow, I mean, but I get you on that. That's so great that again, it's back that you had the opportunity with the stray dogs money to be able to pick up something that normally you would just kind of pass by.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What it's also crazy to me, like how on earth did they see this and go like, "Ah, we'll just get somebody else." Like it's
Right.
so beautiful. And the poster, I mean, the poster that they ended up using is fine, but it's just like a headshot. I guess I get it. I mean, that's what they do for all movie posters, right? It's just a headshot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but Struzan always told it. He kind of how. I mean, he was taking his posters were always kind of. They did tell a bit of the story,
Yeah.
but he presented them in such a unique way. Yeah, I still would think that they should have gone more with something like this. But hey,
And look how he just with graphite did like the Northern Lights and like he really is telling a whole story there. So
yeah.
I agree with Michael Callahan. That lantern lighting is genius. So yeah, that's my Drew Struzan. That I assume will probably be my only Drew Struzan, but who knows? Life is long.
Exactly. And let's see, what was this? American Discord. Hi, Tony. It's Shelby. Glad to see you're still kicking butt, brother.
Oh, thanks, Shelby. Wait, Shelby who?
Well, they didn't give a last name.
Shelby Robertson?
We'll find out.
We'll see.
Yay or nay.
We'll find out.
Let's see. Okay. Well, now the next piece is a little gory. So if the kids are in the room, this is a different dog story.
Oh, I just put a Shelby Robertson in my calf, by the way. So very nice to see you as well.
And nice to have you in the chat, Shelby. So this next piece is a different type of dog story for sure, and I don't know the story behind it. But if young ones in the room, you may want to like cover their eyes momentarily. But it's all art. But this is not Balto.
No.
Tell me a bit about this one because the artist I wasn't familiar with the name Guillermo
Piembert.
What is that?
I say Piembert, but it's a Mexican artist. And me and my buddies stumbled upon this like treasure trove of Mexican pulp covers a couple years ago in COVID, like during the pandemic when everybody's just on group chats and passing artwork around and stuff. And we found this eBay treasure trove of these pieces by this guy, Guillermo Piembert and Jan Basil Dua. Jan does like Star Wars comics and stuff at Marvel. And these are from years ago. She's trans, so these are from before she transitioned. So like to look her up, you might have to use her other name, but I'm not getting into that. But just like these incredible, violent, sexual, like who knows what obviously you know what the point of them is, but it's just like, good Lord, they're so powerful. And like the artwork is a little bit cartoony, but like 1,000% gory. And I put 2 of them in my calf. But I have 3 other ones that I'm gonna put up sooner or later, and they're just each one more sexual and violent than the last. And the price on them was shocking how affordable they were. Like it was just like somebody was just clearing out. And so like I said, I bought 5 of them, and I think it was like maybe $300 for all 5.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like it was a miracle. I was delighted when they all showed up at my house. One of my favorite things I ever found, these pieces. And I was able to find one of the they're not pulps, they're called something else, but they're like little tiny comic books, printed in like red ink instead of black ink, and just like little crime stories. But this one, again, having done Stray Dogs, I was like, I got to get that dog. That guy is going crazy on that guy.
He certainly is. So those aren't like Tijuana Bibles or anything, the small print.
I don't think that's what they are.
Approach. Cheap, just like something that, cheap, affordably printed.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they're like Tijuana Bibles, but I don't think that's specifically what they're called. They're called something else. And I feel a little ignorant not having like done the full research on them, but I was just so taken by the artwork.
No, it's there's a fair amount of this style artwork on calf. I mean, I think it's and I see it's very interesting because I love painted artwork. I mean,
yeah,
I go to that IX art show. I love I love pen and ink, interior, regular comic book artwork, but I'm always drawn to painted pieces, and so I think, I mean, these are really well done. I mean, for regardless of what how they were, what they were used for or whatever. I think it's a wonderful painting. Although I did have to chuckle. I saw Timothy Finn said the full moon in the background is an interesting choice. Well said, Tim. Well said.
It is like it's almost like the direction from the art director on these was just like as sexy as possible and as violent as possible. And it's on every one of them. Like it's always just like nearly like you're nearly seeing like private parts and just like the most horrifying violence you could imagine.
Right. If they could just mix horror into it too, that would that would amp everything up even more.
There's like a whole there's like a whole set of them that were about women going crazy and stealing babies from people, or like or like abortions. Like it gets very dark and weird. Like the lady that like hunted down and kidnapped that other woman and like cut the baby out of her, like that type of stuff. Like they're getting into that level of horror, but just with these beautiful paintings about it. So
Right.
I got one of those too. But that's I kept it classy for this episode. Just a dog and a big fat ass.
I do appreciate that.
Of course, only the best for you.
And hey, Shelby said she's a fly on the wall for some of these streams. Thank you, Shelby. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think I enjoy doing these things a lot, and getting the chance to talk to Tony is worth its weight in gold, honestly. Especially because you collect too. I mean, a lot of times I talk to an artist and they don't collect at all. And I like the ideas of artists exchanging artwork with other artists because it's just a good way to go. But there's some artists that just don't collect, and I always think if I was an artist, I'd have to collect. I mean, I'd want to like see how other people did things, and so I think it's awesome that. So when did you start collecting, and were you maybe buying a few pieces here or there before you maybe got right where you were getting regular published work? About when did you start picking up your own pieces?
When I started going to conventions pretty regularly for work,
Mm-hmm.
was when I started collecting. I can't even the first ones I got some Extreme Studio ones early on, and one of my galleries on CAF is just all my Extreme Studios pages. And that was sort of when I saw that those existed and were out there, I was just like, oh, I bet I could get these, I mean, famously Robert Kirkman sort of bought up all the marquee pieces, but they're still out there, like there's these little pieces of the books that I loved that are out there and sort of available. And that was what I started finding and getting. And then a lot of it is like you're saying, artists that I'm friends with will sort of exchange stuff, or I'll be like, I've always liked that piece, I want to get that from you, or they'll give it to me, or there's some of them in here are from stuff that I worked on, or there's some local man stuff in here where it's just like either the artist gave it to us or they were like, hey, I'll cut you a deal on this. So
well, speaking of local man, I guess we can take a look at one of those pieces right now, right?
Yeah. So this is Bill Mouse, who I have loved since I was 14 years old, like all 14-year-olds that read weirdo indie comics. Mm-hmm. He did this book, Nira X Cyber Angel, that spun out of the pages of Zen Intergalactic Ninja. And he was sort of in the same group as like that guy Trent Kaniga, or there was like Matt Martin, or before he was a Firebrand, Ethan Van Sciver. Like they were making these comics just as teenagers or as kids. And Bill Mouse, I think, was a little older than a teenager, but he did all these parody press comics. He made Skin 13. He did all this stuff, and it was sort of like, it was artwork that I looked at and I was like, that's amazing. And also I think I could one day draw like that, like if I got 10 times better, I could be as good as him. Whereas like if I looked at Jim Lee, I'd be like, if I got 10,000 times better, I could draw as good as him, but like
his style gave you hope that you could break in as well.
Right. And I don't think that's like insulting. I think it's just sort of like, it was aspirational for me. Like I saw him and I was like, I think I can piece together how he's doing this,
Yeah.
So I was like a completist for his work. Like I chased it down. And then when I started buying original art, I I found some of his on eBay and I picked up a piece, and then I tracked him down at Comic-Con and I bought a couple more pieces. And his stuff, like he, besides Near X, he hasn't really had like a huge book in a long time. So his stuff has always been sort of affordable. And Seeley is tight with him. And so when we were talking about guys that we could get for Local Man, we talked about Bill Mouse early on. We were like, do you think, for me, it's just like, do you think it's possible we could get Bill Mouse? And he was like, I think I could probably get him. And so then when Bill sent this to Tim, and he sent it right to me, and he was like, you should have this. And so it lives in my collection now. It's a cover for Local Man #4. It's not released yet, so you guys are getting a sneak peek at this. But like those ones we showed earlier, all the Local Man B covers are like what a comic book would look like in the 90s from the superhero team that this guy used to be on. So this is Neon, who's a character that our guy had a relationship with, and it's sort of like her solo comic, like when Liefeld did like the Vogue comic or the Riptide comic. This is our sort of version of that.
I like that idea. I mean, I like that you're working with people whose work you really admired during that time period. So it's making it as authentic as you possibly can.
Yeah, and like I said, it's like fantasy baseball camp, where you're just like I'm gonna go and play with my favorite heroes from when I was a kid.
Well, speaking of, right, here's another. Well, we looked at the published version of this piece by Todd Knock earlier.
Yeah,
this thing's gorgeous.
Thank you. Yeah, he did such an incredible job on this, and like I said, I've known Todd and Dawn, his wife, for years, just doing shows out here. And I think out of everyone that I sort of go and make a fool of myself talking to, like, I think he understands the best, like, how much like those comics meant to me. Or at least he is the most polite about it. I mean, he's a super nice dude. So maybe he's just shining me on the best. But yeah, his stuff, in a similar way to the way I felt about Bill Mouse, I felt about Todd's extreme stuff. Particularly, he did this book called New Men, which was like their New Mutants or like their Gen 13 or whatever. And it was like Gen 13 to me looked like it was drawn by God and Jesus Christ himself, and it would be impossible for a human being to do that. And New Men, I look at it and I go, that looks fucking cool. I'm sorry, I don't mean to, like, that looks cool too, but I think I could figure it out, like, I think if I was 10, 20 times better, I could do that as a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
And so it was very aspirational for me. And this piece, when we started talking about this, Todd was one of the very first people I said, probably the first person. I was like, I know Todd. I think we could get him to do it. I'll go talk to him. And he is very busy. So it was like a miracle that he was able to make time to do this for us. But when we came to him and said, like, basically the way we explained it was like, this is like if they still made Bad Rock and Company, which was his first ongoing book, or it was a mini series, but it was the character Bad Rock from Youngblood, and then it was a team up book. And so it's like that, but it's with our character Crossjack, who's like the star of Local Man. And Jim Valentino gave us permission to use Shadowhawk. And then I said, I remember from reading the indicia on New Men that Rob Liefeld owned all of New Men except Todd Knock owned this character Bootleg. So it was like he made up this one character and he owned it, because that's how they did back in those days. Like Eric Stevenson owned this character named Exit, I think. And like the different guys at the different studios, if they made up a character, they'd let them just like this. They owned, like, J. Scott Campbell at the time owned Freefall, I think. Like everybody else, Gen 13 was Jim Lee and Aegis Entertainment. But J. Scott Campbell had a piece of Freefall, I think. So I said, hey, do you still own Bootleg? Like, could we use her? And he was like, I do still own Bootleg. And so that's who's down in the corner, is this character from New Men, my my favorite comic when I was a little kid. And then when I put the design together for it, it says, from the pages of New Men, it's Bootleg, which I'm the only person on earth who cares at all, that it's Bootleg. Me and Todd, I think, are the most excited that Bootleg's back.
Man.
But yeah, he did, like we were talking about before, he did this a digital prelim, and then he did a very tight pencil in digital, and then he printed it out and inked it, and he cut me a pretty decent deal on the original.
Well, that was nice of him. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to be able to own that. I know of a few other collectors or artists who've done projects where you get a guest artist to do a variant cover or something like that, and it had you're getting people you admire doing the work in the first place, but then to get the opportunity to actually put it in your collection. I mean, how cool is that when you've got somebody, the people that you admire working on a project that that you've created, and they're as into it as you are.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And yeah, he was just excited working on it. And then my buddy Brian Reber colored all of these throwback covers. And then like he was like giving notes back and forth and just sort of like getting psyched about seeing it come together. It was really fun working on it. And I got to talk to him about, I see him in person and I try to at least have some sort of level of professionalism, but we got so deep on this that I was just like asking him Newman questions and like really deep, Extreme Studios stuff, and just like, what was, he told me about issue like 11 or 12 of Newman. He was like their utility player. Like he could just draw fast. And so when everybody else would fall behind, they would get Todd to just finish out the issue. So there's just like random pages of his will show up in Youngblood or whatever. And he would do like, fill-in issues on Brigade, and he told Liefeld at issue 11 of Newman, he said, like, I just want to focus on one thing and get good at it. And you can see between the issue before and that issue, like just a marked improvement when he just was able to focus on one thing and just like finding out, like, it was like discovering, some sort of secret, like lost secret behind the scenes gem. I had a amazing time working on that thing with him. I mean, working on it. I just emailed him, but it was great.
Very, very cool. But you picked another piece by him, but not from Local Man Heroes.
Yeah.
Now this is from Newman right there at DPM.
Yeah. So this is a 2-page spread from Newman after he was just doing one issue at a time, I think. And there's Bootleg on the left there. Head's a little small, teenage Todd. I don't want to critique here.
I had a friend who drew that like that in the late '80s, and I was like, man, your anatomy just sucks. You're not drawing good. And then that was like the way everybody drew everything in the '90s, right? Everybody's heads were small and their bodies were big. But
what I dug about this and about his work is if you look at her fist, you can break down how he draws fists. And and you look at those like Century guys down at the bottom, you look at their fists, you can see it. I remember just like as a youngster looking at his stuff and just going like that, I can see how you draw a fist just by seeing how he breaks down the fist. And then, so the other cool thing about this is for some reason, each of them is credited by their full names on this one. So he's T. Albert Nock. And I had no memory of John Workman lettering anything at Extreme Studios, but this one's lettered by John Workman. So that was cool. I mean, you can tell immediately when you look at it, you're like, yeah, it's John Workman.
Wow, this is a gorgeous page all around. I mean, it's the layout is interesting. I mean, being a getting there, essentially being a title page laid out like that. I love when when the artists take very great liberties with concepts that are normal, or could be just handled in a simple way. And here he's the characters in the chair. They throw the copy there. I mean, it's awesome. I love this page. It's one of all the pieces you picked. I mean, this was one of my favorite ones. I just love the composition on it.
Yeah, I love that foreground, and then the characters and the heroes in the midground, and then the little stormtrooper guys in the background. Yeah, it's great, and those letters are super good. I love when a page has letters on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's we don't really have that anymore. I draw the pages I draw on Local Man. I draw the balloons right into it, and it's digital, so it hardly matters. But it just feels good, sort of having them in there in the composition.
Yeah, Klaus Janson on Saturday, and he was saying the same thing about he just prefers the artwork with the word balloons on it, not even pasted on it, but drawn on it.
Yeah,
he he's a stickler for that. And well, we're moving over to the next artwork, but Stanley wanted to know, do you have any older artists from the Silver or Bronze Age that you like? Or are you kind of more the 90s to current?
I'm more the 90s, but there are a couple guys that like I would love to have like a really nice Al Williamson.
Mm-hmm.
I would really like to have a George Tuska Power Man. Like I love the way he drew character. Like I would be happy with a George Tuska Power Man page that was just not even Power Man, just like the way he drew extras and like side characters in that thing was so
Mm-hmm.
like so expressive.
There's I know there's a few out there. I've seen them, definitely on CAF. They do exist. I mean, wasn't he always, who inked Tuska in that? Wasn't it more like an Alcala or something like that? I'm trying to think of.
Well,
I feel like I can picture the artwork, but because Tuska is one of those guys, and I mention him a lot, that there's so much of it out there, but I've had a hard time finding a piece to get like that representative Tuska piece for myself, because so
yes,
much of this doesn't hit me. But it's out there.
here they're saying a lot of Billy Graham.
Billy Graham. There we go. Okay.
Yeah. That and the early ones, a lot of Billy Graham. A Tuska Power Man or a Planet of the Apes, because he did that first Planet of the Apes adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
But his Power Man I actually like better. Like I love Planet of the Apes probably more than I like Power Man, but the Power Man pages are way better.
True.
So yeah, not a ton of them, but there are guys that I have. They're not the ones I'm hunting down, probably because they just seem out of reach.
Right.
If I stumbled upon something, I would be like, oh, I'll grab that for sure.
Makes sense. Let's see. So this is a Spawn piece by John Cleary.
Yeah. So John, I have this. This is going to be a theme going through here, that I really like these guys who are the knockoff guy. They're like the guy that can do this. He could almost do McFarlane, like, and when McFarlane was sort of slowing down on Spawn, he was started to bring guys in, and they were, Capullo when he first got there was still drawn like X-Force Capullo, and like Angel Medina hadn't really made it all the way to doing like what he would do on Spawn, and Tony Daniel wasn't fully up to doing his thing. But like this guy was the first guy that got there and did exactly Todd McFarlane. And so this is a splash page from the Violator comic that came with the first run of Todd toys, or McFarlane toys. At the time they were called Todd toys. And I saw it was on eBay, and it wasn't super expensive. And this guy also drew Boof and the Bruise Crew, which is he drew Boof. Boof and the Bruise Crew was the more cartoonier one. Boof looked like McFarlane drew it. And I just always liked this guy's stuff. And I never was mad at somebody if they drew like somebody else. I just sort of looked at it as like, oh, well, now I get more of that. And so this was the guy where I got more McFarlane, which was great because McFarlane was really slowing down. And I found this splash page. I was over the moon excited about it. I wish that he had not signed it so gigantic in 1995, but what are you going to do?
Right. Yeah, I see Dave Kopecki mentioned the same thing, but
Yeah.
signing stuff, right? I mean, we always joke about a lot of the Stan Lee signatures on stuff, and because why or John Byrne, right? I mean, a lot of John Byrne art, he's just signing it right in the middle, anywhere you find an opening that wasn't the gutter. I mean, why not the gutter, John? But everybody has their thing. But at the end of the day, what are you going to do? It's back to if you want it. I mean, you didn't get him to sign it; you bought it signed, right?
Oh yeah. I did not have the foresight to get this in 1995 when I was 14 years old.
Right, exactly.
Although I probably should have. All of these, when you flip them over, they have the original price on the back. And even though I'm not paying like huge prices for these pages, it always hurts my feelings when I see those, whatever it sold for in 1995 or whatever. I'm sure everyone in the chat can identify.
Very, very true. Hey, Dave, it just reminded me of something. I was having somebody help me identify some art today because I'm not a 90s guy, right? And I'm helping Joe Phillips sell some artwork for him. And I didn't recognize any of the characters, so I had a friend help me figure out what the heck the artwork was from. because there's there's some of these characters around. I could grab some stuff and like just show you a couple of them because I was
Let's
like,
do
I don't know who half of these characters are, but I'm going to be able to research it. But I know Dave Kopecki would know who a lot of these characters are because Joe. Joe's had some health issues, so he just sent me a bunch of stuff that he was like, just trying to help me, get what I can get for these things, and I was like, gosh, I don't even, I recognize like Fairchild in one of them, and Darkness is an obvious one, but a lot of it, I was just like, I don't know what the heck this stuff is, but it's all card art. It turns out it's from the Overpower, like an Overpower card game for Image. Okay. So just a lot of stuff like this. All right, I'll switch myself around. I can show you.
Yeah, go full screen.
Yeah, let me
get me out of there.
There we go. So pieces like that, or I finally figured out this is like a Winona Earp.
That's Winona Earp, yeah, for sure.
But but I didn't know it until the other guy helped me figure out who the heck they were.
I'm so close to knowing who that guy is. Dave's gonna know. Dave, I love your calf gallery, by the way.
So I figured, see, Dave can be shouting and saying, telling us who these are, or Marcus too. Marcus is a very knowledgeable guy. Let's see. I know we figured out this one. Somebody who's really fast. I can't remember what her name is.
Velocity.
There you go, Velocity. Yeah. How could I not remember that name? But yeah, all of these things are like from this Overpower card game. So good stuff too.
That's a striker.
And then let's see. I'll just hit a couple other. This one's actually, at least on the site that we were on, was like, that's Harry Houdini. Okay. But he was in something. Yeah, don't know. Nice illustration though. But I know I'm going to be able to find the names for all of these because we found a site that actually listed every one of these artworks, but with their Overpower card. So yeah, I mean, just nice stuff. And Joe's
hardware.
That one I don't recall seeing that one. Is it on the back? No.
There's something on the side. Oh, brass. Is it brass?
It actually is like a name. This one says Armando Dorothy. So yeah, definitely not whatever the character is, but yeah, I mean, just great.
I think they might be right. Yeah.
I can't see what that. Oh, brass. Okay. Yeah. And then this one actually had a name. What was it? Anvil.
Oh yeah, Anvil, invented by my buddy Frank Gomez, who was a Top Cow guy. I'm pretty sure he either he invented them or he just drew the miniseries, but he also drew the Outkast album cover
cool.
For was it Aquemini? No, Southern Playlistic Cadillac Funky Music, maybe.
See, it's like I should have just waited till tonight. I could have showed all these off and
Rainmaker.
Then here was the Darkness piece.
Yeah,
pretty nice. Zealot.
Yep.
Fairchild.
This is the most fun I've ever had. That's obviously.
Well, when I opened up the package, I was like, "Gosh, I love all this art, but I don't know what it is." So I was agonizing over it, but I have a few weeks until the show. So
yeah, Darkness too.
And then not sure about all three of them.
Well, it's Striker in the background. So then...
yeah. I'd have to do some research on that one. And that one right there.
That's one of the Angelas. Oh no, that's from Top Cow. What is that woman's name? She's definitely a Mark Silvestri. Look at those feet.
Yeah, and this one I know I saw
That's right,
Angela. Yeah, I saw the published card for that one. So all of these, I mean, every single one of these is a published card from that game, which I never played, but it was just cool to at least be able to figure out what the heck it all came from.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's see. I don't know. I didn't find who that woman is. But Tiffany. That's right. So, and I'm like, that's a stupid name. Why would they name somebody?
How dare you?
I'm sorry. I don't know. I think
that's Twitch.
Twitch, right? Yeah, Twitch. Exactly.
Is that maybe Jackie Estacado, the other one?
See, this is all right up your alley, man. I should have I just contacted you and Dave and had you both in a chat. We could have looked at the artwork.
Dave, my new best friend. There's Redeemer, Anti-Spawn, and God, what's that other stupid guy's name? Don't worry, Dave knows.
Oh man. But good stuff there. And then, well, you gotta take a look at this.
Shadowhawk, of course.
Yep.
Cracking spines left and right.
Mm-hmm.
The curse. Yeah, I think Tiffany is like the Angela that he still owns. I hope he still owns her.
There you go. There's another one with her.
Yeah, Tiffany and Cyborg Gorilla.
Exactly. That I like that one's a nice little try right there. Almost these are. That was a good one. And then I got this one here. I know there's a few more.
Overt Kill. And I bet that's Jason Wynn, maybe.
It doesn't say on them. That was the problem. It's like most things didn't have any notes. They had numbers on them, but then the numbers didn't really even correspond to the overpower.
Market says the card numbers on top. You're saying it doesn't work though?
It didn't correspond to the site that we found didn't have the numbers corresponding with them, unfortunately. But I mean, maybe there were two sites that the guy located for me where we were able to kind of track them down. So I didn't look at the second one.
Yeah, Dave and Julio were making a fool out of me on that thing. They were really killing it.
Well, Dave should email me. I'm sure he could help me go through them because I want to make sure I describe everything right and try to help Joe out as best I can. He's got some medical bills and a few other things going on. Hero's been helping him out a bit of late, so that was kind of Hero put him in touch with me, saying maybe Bill can help you move a few things. So
yeah, smart.
Yeah, exactly. But where were we now? But thank you everybody for indulging me in that one. That was fun.
These ones I'm going to know for sure.
Now this one I don't think anybody's going to recognize, but you got to tell me a bit about this one.
Yeah, so this is an earlier piece in my collecting. It's an Arthur Adams Star Wars piece. It's pre-long shot, and my buddy Jamie Sullivan had it, and he had some medical bills, and he had to get rid of it. And he had it at a convention with him. He just had he's an artist. He does a lot of G.I. Joe covers and stuff, and Robotech stuff and Star Wars stuff. And he just had his regular setup, but then he also had this, teenage Arthur Adams piece. And I was like, I inquired. I was like, what is this? What's going on here? It didn't have a price on it or anything. He just had it at his table. And so we talked about it for a little bit. And he had a price for it. And it wasn't, I mean, for a teenager, it was a lot of money, but for Arthur Adams, it was a real bargain. And I love Star Wars and I love Arthur Adams. And again, being able to see somebody and see how the piece came together and what they would become. You can see some of Arthur Adams today in here. You can definitely see some long shot Arthur Adams in there. But it's so different from what he does now. That was just so, I don't know. I just loved it the moment I saw it. I had to have it. I love how crazy he went on those bricks, and apparently there's a companion piece to this out there somewhere that has Luke Skywalker and I think Darth Vader, or maybe Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia. But I guess he just did these either at a convention or he was set up at a convention and somebody commissioned them from him. And the person who commissioned it had it for probably 20 years. And then Jamie had it for another 10 or so years. And then I bought it from him probably about 8 years ago now. So it's, that's who's owned it. Me and those two other guys.
That's cool. It is 82.
Yeah, I believe so.
Wow.
82. Yeah, so completely unpublished.
Adams I've ever seen.
Yeah, super early. I feel like there's some of his art books, those little sketchbooks that he puts together. Sometimes there'll be like long shot prelim stuff. But yeah, I've never seen anything definitely not from before this.
Wow. Let's see. Now we're going to look at some Stray Bullets artwork here.
Yeah, this is from Sunshine and Roses, the more recent Stray Bullets series. Stray Bullets is probably my favorite comic ever. If I just had to pick what's the best comic I ever read, and the one that I'm when there's new Stray Bullets coming out is when I'm most excited. And it's sort of like we were talking about with Nick Dragata pages, like you feel special when they come out because they rarely come out. But when Image was putting out the Sunshine and Roses series, this was the second issue of that. So I think it was like maybe the 6th or 7th issue to come out from Image, because they did the last issue of Stray Bullets, and then they did this Killers miniseries, which I think was 5, and then this is the second issue of Sunshine and Roses. But this splash panel at the top is a recreation of like a promo piece that he did for the original Stray Bullets years ago, and it was just sort of like this character, Kretschmeyer, who's the guy loading the gun in that top, like he didn't show up until Sunshine and Roses, like until 2008 or 9 or whenever that series started. So it was just like this drawing of a guy for 20 years or whatever, and then finally we like caught up to that point in the comic. And I like to think that, you know, David Lapham is just that much of a genius that he knew what he was heading towards, and he was just like, well, let me just draw this panel now and then I'll get to it, you know, 20 years from now. But something tells me he was just like, oh, finally I can sort of fit this thing into it. But either way, there's no way I was ever going to be able to find that original piece, and I was so excited that this page that had that recreation in it was available. And Lapham's stuff is always like so affordable. He had a ton of kids, and so he's just always selling his art for what I think is way too cheap. But if you get on his mailing list, you'll you know, like once every couple of weeks you'll get an email about like there's a sale going on, or new pages are going up from this, or he's got commissions going. And obviously I highly recommend him. I think he's like an undersung genius in comics. Anything he does, I'll read it, especially if he's writing and drawing it himself. But my favorite is Stray Bullets. I wish he was just always doing Stray Bullets. Dinesh, if you're out there, please just have him make Stray Bullets at Bad Idea and put them out there, please.
There you go. We can at least put that in Dinesh's ear. I don't think I'm on Lapham's email list. I'll have to do that because you know, I'd be happy to PR some of that stuff for him. Maybe you know, encourage him to raise his prices just a little bit, not to where it's not affordable, but
right. Well, I never see interviews with him or anything, but I feel like he would be the kind of guy that would do one of those sales with you where, you know, you have the guy on and talk about their career and then just have a bunch of stuff for sale. Like, I feel like he would clean up on something like that.
Well, cool. I'll reach out to him too. I mean, like I said, I love doing those shows. They're just fun. I mean, the fact that you get to help sell some artwork and have a really great conversation with somebody. Because usually I don't get to have, you know, you go to shows, you don't get to spend an hour talking with anybody, unless it's at the bar afterwards, and that doesn't happen too often. So these are like with Klaus. On Saturday, I'd never talked to him before.
Right.
So how often am I going to have that kind of an opportunity?
My friend Henry Baharas knows David Lapham from, because I think him and Maria and their family live in Arizona, and Henry's from there. And so like I'll go out to lunch with Henry, and David did a cover for Henry's comic that he put out at Top Cow. And I was just like, it was like he had a, you know, like a Michelangelo or something. I was just like, how, you know, like I don't even know how, like I could email him, but again, you know, like I don't want to ruin that for me, you know, like I'm happy to just send him money sometimes and not ever, you know,
right. Like. Oh man, well here this to me was one of the more unique pieces that you sent me, and this is the Chicago piece by Rick Geary.
Yeah,
I love the you know, the turn of the century feel of this piece. You know, the way he's drawn it to feel like it's been printed very heavily. I mean, I love it. The lettering, everything about it is gorgeous.
Do you know Rick Geary stuff?
I don't, and you know, at the moment I saw it, I was like, damn, I got to go do some research because it's fantastic.
I'll show you what you got to get. He's got these books that are so great. This is from one of them. This is from like the true crime story of the Beast of Chicago. I think H.H. Holmes. And he does these murder comics. So he's done one that's like the Black Dahlia. He did one about the assassination of Abe Lincoln, the Lindbergh baby. But he puts them out in these. Here they are. NBN puts them out there, these collections. And so they're like these like short murder comics, basically.
Okay.
And they come out. I mean, these are out of print, but they're not too expensive. but they're just all like if you like or like if your wife or girlfriend likes true crime stuff like HLN. It's just sort of like well researched. It's like little documentaries on paper, but they're all drawn like that almost like woodcut looking style. Rick Geary he was in heavy metal. He's sort of like one of the OG Comic-Con guys. He actually designed the toucan that's the Comic-Con logo.
Oh, really?
Originally.
Oh, and you're right. I have seen his. Now I know who he is. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, shoot,
but yeah, page,
how did you pick this piece up? Did you get it direct from him?
Yeah, I think he probably still has a few other ones, but that page was on his website. And I had sort of discovered these books. I was going through a real phase where I was just reading all of them and sort of like soaking in all of them, and really, like, I was just really psyched about them. Like if you read Eric Powell's Ed Gein book last year, these are sort of like that, but sort of shorter and more digestible. But I was really going through those books and really loving them. And I looked this thing up and I found this one. This was the only one he had that was almost like a splash page. And I love the upside down composition. I love the rendering on it, and I had to get it. And I bought it right from him. It's one of those ones where it's got that cool like that overlay page, like there's like a piece of vellum taped to the front of it to keep it safe.
Sure.
Yeah, very cool. And obviously hand lettered and just really beautiful. His stuff, he's still putting out stuff like this. He just did one about Billy the Kid a couple of years ago, and he just moved to New Mexico. And I think the last one he did was a Kickstarter, and it was just like a book about his small town in New Mexico. So just sort of like true story, true life stuff, but a lot of it is murders.
Well, I love that image. Well, I'm going to do some research because I don't think I've ever been on his site. So
yeah, Rick Geary, and the books, you can get them on Amazon or eBay or whatever. They're called A Treasury of 20th Century Murder or A Treasury of Victorian Murder. And they either come in these big compendiums, or you can get them like the single stories. NBM published them single. So you can get one that's just Black Dahlia, or one that's just like the assassination of Abe Lincoln or whatever.
I'm a big documentary fan. Because I don't get to watch a lot of TV, but when I'm working, I'll put a documentary on and just listen to it. So and true crime stuff. So even you said wife, nope. I tend to listen to just that because that's all I can really do when I'm busy. But yeah, I'm an addict.
Yeah. Oh, you'll dig it then. You'll definitely dig this stuff. Anybody that likes sort of like true crime or murder stuff, these are the coolest. They're super good.
Somebody said 3 pieces of art left. Not quite. We have 16 tonight. That was number 9. I didn't count the pieces from
3 hours of art left is all.
Yes, we'll get through this, guys. We won't keep you here all night.
Sorry. Thank you for hanging out. Hey.
So yeah, moving on to something a little different. Rob Liefeld.
Yeah. So this is from Deathmate Red. Like I said earlier, Robert Kirkman sort of has all of the marquee Rob Liefeld stuff, but somehow he missed this one. It must have been, somebody must have had it in a collection and didn't put it up for sale until later, or I don't know. But I was so psyched when this one came out because I've got a few other Liefelds in my gallery, but they're all from sort of like the later Youngblood series. This is sort of the only original era Youngblood piece that I have, and it's Die Hard, and he's kicking the crap out of some stormtrooper type, your regular Liefeld bad guys. They have masks on that don't have features, and he's just beating the crap out of them with his shield, all Captain America style. I don't know, I just love it so much. I got this one off eBay, and it was up there for a long time, and it was not cheap, but not psychotic, so it was just a matter of like pulling the trigger on it, and it took me a little while, but eventually I was just like, I gotta get it. I think it was like Image Accruals came in or something, and I just went, okay, we'll do it today. And I clicked the button and sat back and waited.
And it's got his classic scribbly panel layouts and things, which were cool back in the day.
Yeah, man, just like those. Shelby, if he's still here, could probably tell me. I just always assume those are done with just like a Sharpie or something, but it could be like a wedge or something like that. Shelby did some stuff at Extreme. He inked some Liefeld stuff, and he also penciled a few books here and there as well. But yeah, those like kinetic panel borders, I love them so much. And just that it's got the splash panel, it's got the close-up panel, You know, it has almost everything I'd be looking for in a Youngblood page, except for Badrock. That's really the thing that I feel is missing here. And there were some incredible Badrock pages in that issue in Deathmate Red, but obviously whoever has those is going to hold on to them and keep loving them for their whole life.
Yeah, that's how it usually goes. But you never know. You might get lucky. There's still plenty of collecting left in you, I'm sure, Tony. And then here we go. We got another piece by Rob. Did I get the right one? I think.
Yeah. This is the one. This was a cover. This is a cover rough, and I got this from Glenn Brunswick, at his site, because he sells art for Rob.
Mm-hmm.
And this is from the most recent Youngblood series before he lost Youngblood. So this was like the 2010, 2011, maybe it was later than that. The artwork in the book was by Jim Toe. And it was sort of like it was in continuity, basically, like everything from Youngblood happened, but then it was just sort of like a more modern take on it. But Rob did covers for the whole thing, and he did some backup stories. But I got this because I love Blood Wolf. It was Rob's obvious take on Lobo. He was just like, we should have a Lobo over here too, and so he made this character Blood Wolf, who first showed up in Darker Image, and I assumed I would never see Blood Wolf again, and then he just showed up in that series and on this cover. And while the original cover art was gone, he had this rough, and I was so happy to find it. I got this one, and I got one other rough, one or two other roughs from him from covers from that series. So I was very, very excited to find those. Anytime I can find Youngblood stuff, because there's a lot of Rob stuff out there, but it'll be like Deadpool, or it'll be, you know, a lot of his New 52 stuff is sort of out there floating around. Mm-hmm. But Youngblood is a little, it's not super rare, but it's not as common as some other stuff. So I was psyched to find these.
That's a great composition on it too, which I think on I like the layout. I think it's really well done.
Yeah, it's energetic, and just both those characters. That's Doc Rocket too, who's like a speedster. I just like both of those characters, and it feels kinetic. It feels energetic.
Let's see.
Dave Kopecki boldly going on that Whatnot stream. I went on one time and I spent so much money that I was like, well, I can't.
Rob does a Whatnot?
I can't go on Whatnot anymore. I tried it out. I was at a convention, and the convention was not going great, but I made a little bit of money, and then I spent it all right then.
Right on the show floor?
right there on Whatnot that night.
Oh my God.
And so then I was like, well, I can't. I bought a house. I can't do this. I can't. Is you get so wrapped up in the heat of the moment, you're just like, oh, that unfinished sketch is probably worth about $700-800, right? You know, you just
yeah. I've managed to avoid Whatnot so far, but I mean, I'm really intrigued by it. I think it's a cool plot. You know, it's like what we do on like the Dueling Dealers sometimes. You know, where you have to make a quick decision. And I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, especially when you get to interact with Rob, or I mean, doesn't Kevin Eastman have a Whatnot? I mean, I haven't seen any of them, but to me, I'd like to just tune in just to watch them, because I think they'd be a lot of fun and interesting to see them and their salesmanship.
I mean, I don't want to ruin these people's situation who like a Dueling Dealers on YouTube, but on Whatnot, it would be outrageous. Like, it's just so gamified, and you're just like, you get so caught up in it, and when you push the button, it just bids, so you don't have to keep track of it. And then just somebody wins, and it just takes their money immediately. Like it's almost too easy. That's
crazy. But yeah, so you're always getting caught up in the heat of the moment.
Yeah. Dave's right. It's FOMO. It's FOMO city. Like there were people like I was on there. I bought a page from a pencil page from Youngblood, and a unfinished like cover or just illustration he was doing of Shaft, and like 2 color guides. I was out of control. Like I was just like, oh, I gotta have that too. Oh, I gotta get that. You know. So I sort of made a deal with myself that I was not going there unless I had some other sort of crazy windfall.
You had to delete the app from your phone until
exactly
your funds were replenished. All right. Well, hey, next artist is somebody who I really like, and there's definitely not enough of their artwork on CAF. Let's pull this one up here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Roger Cruz.
So again, like I was saying, those guys that draw like somebody else, and at the time, everybody remembers when Joe Madureira said Cruz swipes again in the pages of X-Men, how scandalous that was. But at the time, I was happy that Cruz was swiping. I was just like, look, there's not enough Joe Madureira. I need more. Thank God this guy exists and he's doing it. This is from the Youngblood Volume 2, and I bought this on CAF.
Oh, really?
Roger Cruz has you can still get stuff from him on CAF. He's got a site and his rep is there, or not a site. He's got a page, and his rep is there, and he'll sell you stuff. It's from Brazil, so you got to do like whatever weirdo thing you got to do to wire money to Brazil. But it's great. I mean, it's just so cool looking. It's a splash page. I was so happy I found this because I won't say who because I can't remember off the top of my head, but one of these ones where you have to inquire about the price,
Yeah.
They had a spread from Youngblood X-Force that Cruz did, a 2-page spread. And I inquired about it, and they said a number that was so outrageous that I could hardly stand up when I heard it. Like it was shocking.
Did you reply to the outrageous comment, or did you just kind of drop it right there?
No, I was ashamed, so I was just like, oh, maybe, we'll see. But yeah, I felt I was bummed out about it, and then I ran into this because Cadence also sells some of his pages, but his earlier Team Youngblood stuff, but this Youngblood Volume 2 stuff is for me the primo Cruz. Like that's what I'm looking for. That's my favorite of his stuff. And in my CAF, I have probably like 10 or so Cruz pages that I got from either Cadence or eBay or from him directly on CAF. And this one I got straight from him. Splash page. It's from this crossover that they did with Shadowhawk called Shadow Hunt. And it has, as well as being badass, it also has a real silly tangent in it, in that, you have to look extra hard to tell whose fist that is in the middle of the page. Is it Sentry's fist or Sentinel's fist? Is it Riptide's fist? Is it what's his name? Night Saber's fist?
You're right.
And then it's like twinning. There's a thing called twinning that you try not to do, where you don't want to draw something that's the same as something else. So like Badrock's fist up top is the same fist, just bigger. So it's sort of like it draws your eye back and forth between those things. So while I think the piece is amazing and I love it, it also has this sort of thing as like a good reminder to me as an artist to make sure you're being very clear about whose arm is which.
Right. That's funny. I didn't notice it, and now I can't stop looking at it.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the artwork that you sent me, so I'm kind of zooming into it. And you're right. It's a tough question on whose hand that belongs to, but
it's the guy. It's Nights. It's a
gotta be, right. Gotta
be,
but I know what you mean though. You don't want to put it in that kind of position. So that's funny.
Yeah. But it has a Badrock on it, and that is what's most important to me in this one. Is it's got like almost all the guys you'd want on there. If it had Shaft, it would be 1,000% perfect. But I super love this one. I was so happy that he had it. And like I said, there's a bunch of cruises on my CAF page, so you can go check those out. I've got some ones that I'm really happy with. This is being one of them for sure. He's doing DC stuff now, and he worked with my buddy Josh Williamson on Robin recently, and I was just like, again, it was like somebody was working with Michelangelo or something. Like it was just like Roger Cruz for real, Roger Cruz, or like my friend Andrea Mello is Brazilian, and she knows him, and I'm just like, what's he like? Is he cool?
Stanley wanted to know if you ever sell art from your collection. Or do you
I don't generally. I'm definitely not any of these that you're seeing tonight because they're favorites. But if you see something on there that you're like, if you are watching this and you can kind of tell what I dig, if you think I might be up for a trade or something, maybe that. But I like talking to people, so feel free to message me.
There you go. Next piece. Let me switch over to here. Here we go. This is that Pat
Yeah.
Lee piece.
Yeah, this is Pat Lee. I think his first extreme book, Bloodpool #1. Pat Lee was sort of like, when he started out, he was like the baby Stephen Platt. Like he was doing the Stephen Platt thing, but he also could draw girls better than Stephen Platt could. And this one, even though now, in hindsight, there's some craziness going on here. When I saw this page pop up on eBay, I remembered it distinctively from being a teenage boy and this just being like a girl out at a club in a bra. And I also remembered how detailed, like, of everything that he drew on this page, the filigree and lace on that bra is so intricate that I was just like, I must have it. I had to have this one. And again, I don't know how many Bloodpool fanatics there are out there, so it wasn't, it didn't cost me an arm and a leg, but I was just so happy to get it. And again, like when I talk about, taking a look at these pages and sort of really studying them, this one, I like when people do fakey leather work, where it's like, that's probably not, like when Adam Hughes draws leather or vinyl, you can tell he's probably looking at photos of leather or vinyl. And this one, you can tell he's faking it, but it just looks so cool to me. And I just super dig it.
That's a really nice page. I like the layout. I like everything about it. And yeah, the leather chaps or whatever she's got going on there.
I love that you're being so encouraging on this.
It's art, right? At the end of the day, you can be objective. I mean, the thing is, I can just smile because I missed the 90s entirely. As far as comics go, I had to go back and read and figure out what the hell happened because I didn't know Jim Lee worked on the X-Men. I missed all that because of just being in, after going to college or starting college, like a year into college, I couldn't buy anymore. So by 88 to 89, I stopped buying and I didn't buy another comic till about 97. So I just missed all of this excitement. And so it's cool. It's definitely, for me, whenever I'm stumbling through CAF and looking at stuff, I'm like, I know what error is because I can't identify it.
Right.
And it's that 90 spot. And that's the hottest segment of original comic art collecting today, I think, as far as growth and whatnot. There's so many people who are just enamored with 90s books. Even whether it's Marvel, Image, whatever. I mean, I think that's just one of the hotter eras of artwork out there. We see kind of record prices all the time. So you're not the only one who really digs this era.
Yeah. Marcus Y is right, though. I do sure love Extreme Studios.
Oh, yes, there it is. I didn't see that comment. Yes, well, Marcus is very insightful, always. Okay, here we go. Next piece, Marat Michaels, Youngblood piece.
So this one, Marat was one of the first pros. Again, like these guys that I met when I would do shows out here. I was sat next to him at a convention, and he was just the sweetest person, like the nicest dude. And again, like he was so nice that I was like, I think I'm gonna fully geek out on this guy. So like we spent a whole weekend, and I would just be like, remember Youngblood #0? That was awesome. So yeah, I just sort of talked to him about like what that was like, and it's so different from the way comics are, now. Just like like his first comic sold, like hundreds of thousands of copies, and then he was just there, like making insane page rates as just like a kid, in the 90s. And this piece is Brahma from Youngblood. He was in the original Youngblood that Rob like pitched before Image when he was trying to, like, I think they printed it in Vanguard or Comics Vanguard, wherever Youngblood first showed up. They also reprinted it in the Youngblood hardcover. But he's one of the original guys, the more sort of George Perez Youngblood characters from the original stuff. And this was from like an official handbook type thing called Youngblood Battle Zone. And so it was like comics were selling so great that they were just like, let's just do a book full of pinups and we'll tell you what these guys are about, but there wasn't a whole history of the Marvel universe to put on these things. They would just sort of have to wing it and say what these guys were up to. But this is drawn by Marat and inked by Jonathan Sibal. And I bought it off eBay. One of my earlier pieces that I grabbed when I started collecting, especially when I started collecting Extreme Studios stuff.
Oh, very cool. I've never had the chance to meet Marat, so that's
just the nicest dude, and we'll just draw the same homage cover 100 times because people will just come and buy it from him 100 times. He did this cover for Local Man that I showed you, the shiny one, because we reached out to him and said like, hey, would you bless us with, I'm going the wrong way, with one of your pieces, and he did, and I was sort of talking to him about what like we weren't sure what we would do with Local Man. Should we do homage covers, or like, talking, because he does so many homage covers, and I was like, I just don't want to have to like repeat the same things over and over again. And he's like, why not? They will buy it. Just do it.
and he knows, right?
Yeah, that was his energy. So yeah, it totally does look like Brock Lesnar as well, but less abusive.
Well, 2 more pieces here. Chris Brown.
Here we go.
Chris Sprouse is the next one here. I love this cover. It's a cover image, right?
Yeah. One of my few covers. I think I have two Youngblood covers, and I think I probably have like only 5 or 6 covers altogether. But yeah, Chris Sprouse was, when they started to like class up the joint at Extreme Studios, they brought in Alan Moore and they brought in Chris Sprouse. And I had loved Chris Sprouse on like Legionnaires. And then all of a sudden he was drawing my favorite characters, and I just was so psyched about it. He did a run on Newman, but most famously, obviously, he drew Alan Moore's Supreme.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of after the first run of Supreme, he sort of did the second run. He was like the steadiest Supreme artist, I guess, probably after like Jay Morrigan, and obviously Rick Veitch. But yeah, he came in and drew Extreme Studios books, and this piece was on maybe Cadence, or maybe it was on his site. I can't remember exactly where I got it from. Whoever sells Chris Sprouse's work, and I grabbed it from him, and I'm very happy with it. It's from the Youngblood Super Special, which was like an annual or something, and it's got none of my favorite characters. But it's drawn by one of my favorite artists from that era, so I was psyched about that.
Yeah, no, it's gorgeous, and I mean, I've always been a big fan of Chris's work too. I mean, he's just got a delicate line. I mean, everything he does is it's stunning. So I love this piece when I saw it.
Yeah, and this one on the back of it, he's got some sort of sketch stuff where he was sort of working stuff out. So that's on the calf page too. You can see the little sketchy stuff there. Yep, as well. Yeah, I love Chris Sprouse. I feel like I see him on covers now more than interiors, which I guess everybody sort of heads that way sooner or later. But I would love to have him do another run on something. He did Supreme, he did Tom Strong, which is sort of like the Alan Moore getting out more of his Supreme yayas.
I like Tom Strong. I mean, I found it, but in part I really liked it because of Chris's work in it too. I mean, I just thought he drew him so well, and
so classic, like so elegant.
Yeah, and they did some cover homages in Tom Strong too, right?
Yeah. All those America's Bests.
Yeah. I really enjoyed a lot of the America's Best titles, but yeah, Tom Strong was just a fun read. I enjoyed it. But yeah, I'm going to put your link to your calf gallery back in the chat for anybody who's curious. You want to check it out now or later. Leave some comments on Tony's collection while you're there.
Yes, please. I have no comments. Very, very few comments.
Well, Marcus can fix that. He's the
Thank you, Mark.
Comments over on calf. So we got one more piece here to look at, and this one is another blood strike, right? But wow, look at the detail on this one.
Yeah. So this one, the page after this, like that, like Emperor Palpatine things about to lift off of this guy Cabot and have like this crazy like super shredder version of a Super Sentai, you know, version of this guy. But I just love this page. I love the 2-page spread. I love the tech. It's by my buddy Carl Altestetter, which I believe is how you pronounce his last name. He has a tough one, even tougher than my last name to pronounce. But what I liked about this page is it's sort of like that Marat Michaels brigade page that I talked about when we first started this interview, where it's almost 1,000% Rob Liefeld drew that page or that panel 3 face, you know. So like all of it looks like Carl except for that one right there in the middle that looks like
that's funny. So wait a minute, have I been butchered? Did I butcher your last name? How do you pronounce your last name?
No, you said it right. It's Fleece, but most people say Fleecs.
Ah, okay. I was just guessing, but I thought I was getting it right.
No,
but
you got it right. Yeah, but you're right. It does have a little bit of Arthur Adams to it. But this is Carl, and Carl's another guy. Like he, out of all the people, like the LA comic artists who drew these comics back in those days, he's probably the one I know the best. Like I've been out to eat with him a few times and sort of hung out with him. He used to do like a comics and coffee night in the Valley, and like me and Tone and my buddies would go hang out with him and stuff. So like he's like a super sweet guy. He works in toys now mostly, and he did a Local Man cover for us that hasn't been released yet. Sorry, my family's on a text chain right now. They're talking about how I'm on Comic Art Fans on YouTube, I'm sure.
When are you gonna come down and take the dog out for a walk or something?
Yeah, no, they're all the way in Colorado. There's nothing I can do to help them here. Yeah, but I just love this page. Like I said, I love the tech on it. I love that it's a 2-page spread. I love that girl's face, and I super love that clearly drawn by Rob Liefeld face in the middle there. And I've got a bunch of Carl's stuff, but this one I bought from him at WonderCon last year. And when I saw it, I was just like, holy crap, that's so cool. I got to have it. So again, it's like, I don't know who all else is super excited about it besides me, but like, this is the kind of stuff that really gets me going. Like just the idea, like I said, like I can imagine they're sitting in a studio together, you know, like they're coming up with stories and ideas and stuff. And then he's like, Rob Liefeld's just like, let me see that. Let me fix that face for you. And drew that face. So yeah, Dave, 100%. Yeah, Carl worked at Homage Studios originally, and then he went to Extreme Studios. He's got incredible stories. He designed some stuff that you would not believe, like some stuff that's part of the popular culture, just from being in those rooms. Like I would love for someone to make a documentary about this guy, just sort of Forrest Gumping. It sounds like he was stupid, but he just sort of like was there in all these rooms and all these things happened, you know, just amazing to me. So I love talking to him about that stuff.
Right. And you just bought this last year?
Yeah. I bought it from
this page is in the mid-90s, right? So
he just will show, like he doesn't sell them online, or I don't think he has a dealer. He'll just show up at conventions and just have a stack of random stuff. And I think since I started just buying these pages from him, he knows that there's going to be me and other idiots like me that are just going to be like, what do you got from Bloodstrike? You know?
Right. So he always has to bring a few to shows. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun. Well, you know, there's a lot of artists like that too. You know, they're not too in a rush to sell their pieces, and but I think that's cool. I think when you hear stories of artists who have held on to their work for a while, you know, I think that's awesome, because there's so often you hear the guys back in the day, right, in the 60s and 70s, they sold their stuff immediately, didn't hold on to it at all, and then there's guys like him who's just kind of slowly goes to a show. Yeah, I'll take another 30, 40 pages with me to the show, and if I sell half of them, I'm okay. If not, I'm happy to sit on them.
Yeah, that's exactly. Awesome. I got sort of like tacit invitations to the Todd Knock basement where all his Extreme Studio stuff is. I don't think it's probably a basement because we live in California, but like he apparently has a collection of them there. And same with I met Danny Meeke and his wife at a convention in Ontario, California, and their kid was a huge My Little Pony fan, and I was like, listen, do you have Extreme Studio stuff? And they were like, we have more of it than we know what to do with. And so it's been like 5 years ago, pre-COVID and stuff. So I'm sure if I hit them up now, they'd be like, who? Our daughter is a grown-up. She doesn't care about My Little Pony. But it was for a moment there, I almost had the hookup.
Dang, that's awesome though. But no, I don't think the kids don't grow out of My Little Pony. My kids are proof that they do not.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, but Tony, man, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it. I think I don't know why we didn't do it sooner. I know that um, I don't know. We definitely should have. But
Well,
I hope this project is going to go beyond the 5-book run that
yeah.
you've got kind of arced out right now. I mean,
Yeah, I hope so too. We're having a ton of fun making it, and like just today, Tim and I were sort of doing like hashing out script stuff on a phone call, and so it's like the collaboration on it is super fun. And I think we're making a unique thing, so I'm hoping that we keep going with it. So if you guys wouldn't mind picking it up, you guys watching, when you go to the shop this Wednesday, just give it a look, because then we'll probably reprint it, and then we can sort of keep going from there. That would be great.
Well, I was since I've moved to Florida, I haven't had the chance to get to a local comic shop, but I was planning on going into town this weekend to go to Coliseum Comics. I think that's the main one here in Orlando.
Coliseum, by the way, exclusive Local Man cover available at Coliseum by Brian Haberlin.
Seriously?
Yeah. Might be done with AI. I don't know. I don't ask, God bless.
AI is a completely different conversation that could take.
Sure,
yeah, I can tell you something about AI because I do that. I do a side project, a book called Infected by Art. So I work with a lot of sci-fi fantasy artists as well, and they're the ones kind of very up in arms about the whole AI situation, of course, because I always forget the name of that one site where a lot of them use ArtStation, I think, where people were ripping. They allowed the AI stuff to crawl there. So I kind of got in touch with a group that was involved with trying to essentially block the AI crawlers and find quicker ways to get the work out of those AI systems, right? Because you want to protect your intellectual property. Up until when Disney gets involved, they'll take care of it. But so I was really worried about CAF as far as being a resource for these bots to crawl. And the funny thing is that we found was that the AI bots didn't really target sites like ours, like CAF, or even the Infected by Art site that has about, say, 40,000 pieces of art on it. The crawler would only have like a couple hundred. It turned out that by and large, they've really set these the bots out onto all social sites, Pinterest, and those types of places, and they didn't, or just sent them directly to artist websites,
right?
That they wanted to crawl. They just kind of overlooked sites like mine. So like Facebook is all over it. I mean, but it was kind of interesting. You would have thought that it would have functioned like a regular image crawler and just go everywhere. We have 1 million images on CAF. There should have been 1 million pieces in there. There weren't even 10,000. So, and I think all the ones they got were from shared images on other social sites. So they never came to our sites, even though,
Were you able to lock it down so that they can't? Or no?
Yeah. Well, I set up referral things that made it so that because the programs don't, like if you were trying to run an AI app on your, art generation tool on your computer, it doesn't store the images. It actually has to go out and grab them and bring them in, even if it thinks it knows what it is, but then it has to be able to get it. So we went in and put in stoppages such that I will only load an image if it's being called from my website or a site I allow it to, like a Pinterest.
Right.
But if that thing that's trying to get it is just a program, I mean, it's not coming from a place I trust. So that it's blocked from getting the image. So it can't grab CAF images or anything to go feed that monster to help it learn things. So yeah, I mean, so I was working with the developers who are working to block them in numerous different ways, but I was giving them all the tools that are references that I was using because, I mean, it's a hot topic. I don't want anybody's stuff stolen. And I think there will be rules in place, laws, made around this thing. It's unfortunate they just kind of released it and let it out like that. But I do think that there'll be, because I think that artists should make money off that. If you allow your art to be used in there, but pay me to use it, right? I mean, I should be getting a royalty if I'm going to allow you to use my creativity to create other images. So I think there's a right and a wrong way to do those things, but the artist at the end of the day has to be protected and compensated if it's going to work like that.
Yeah, I haven't dug too deep into it, but I always on these things I find myself somewhere in the middle, where I'm just like there's a part of me that's just like, well, I'm not worried about a computer like co-opting what I do because so much of it comes from my own
Yeah,
personality and like I think we're probably a good 50 years away from them being able to steal my whole thing, and by then I'll be dead. So whatever.
right.
But I do feel like, I have friends who do like fantasy art and like, paint dragons and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, they're done, like
Yeah.
that's over for them because these, fantasy novel, Tor is not going to hold the line forever on paying them a fortune to paint dragons when they could just say type dragon into a computer and have a dragon pop out.
Do it themselves, right? Well, Tor already got in trouble in that. It was funny. I like the month before that came about, I was talking to somebody on a CAF update, and I was like, I'd really like to talk to Tor because they've been responsible for a lot of great artwork being put out over the years, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it would be interesting to talk to a couple art directors from there, right? And just say, wow, you guys have done a good thing, right? You've helped create artworks and
Yeah.
employ artists and put new artworks out in the world that we get to collect. And then it wasn't even a month that the Tor, they had shown that they had used AI to create a book cover. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, scratch that one off my list. I don't need to talk to them.
Well, I think both can be true. Like they definitely did keep an industry going for like,
They
50
did,
years.
absolutely. I mean,
And
because I think it got, lots of places. Do you think about like Michael Moorcock Gaming, right? I mean, all
yeah,
those, there's so many different segments of
Magic the
where
Gathering.
images that were being generated that we're employing artists and putting work out there that we get to we get to buy, and I think it'd be cool to talk to as many of those places as possible because we owe them a debt of gratitude in a way that they were employing artists and putting out these traditional works like that for us for so many years. So but yeah, the Tor thing just got me. I mean, I just have bad timing sometimes. I'm like,
You're
I'm
just about to hit send on the email.
right, exactly.
Uh, Real
But
quick,
yeah.
Michael Callahan. I do have a frag. I got a great fragga on my calf page. It's from Berserkers. Go check it out. It's dope. I do not have a Jeff Matsuda. My extreme grails are I want a Jeff Matsuda, I want a Chap Yap, and I obviously want a Stephen Platt. But that's like, I would also like to have a Ferrari Testarossa.
Yeah,
But,
flats are like unicorns at the end of the
yeah,
day. There's a lot of people that would love to have a decent flat piece, but
there's a Matsuda troll promo piece. I think it's on CAF that I've had my eye on. It does. Either the price isn't listed or it's not too out of control, and I've sort of had my eye on it. But I bought this house and I've sort of been trying to be responsible. So
well, we need local man to become the next stray
yeah,
dog, and you might
exactly.
get that local man money, and you can.
And just watch how foolish I get.
Well, I expect you to have at least twice as many books behind you if that were to happen. But
No, exactly. Yeah.
many pieces in your calf gallery too. Oh man! So listen, this is a lot of fun, and I know somebody. I think Stanley said it. He asked if you get out to a lot of cons. I know that you get out to a fair number of shows every year. What's like the next 3 or 4 shows you got on your schedule?
I'm doing a lot of pony conventions. I don't have any big ones booked this year yet. Like I haven't talked to Heroes yet. I haven't even talked to Jimmy. I usually do the amazing shows.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to set some stuff up. I was literally just talking to my art rep last night about like we got to get some shows set up because I was not doing any shows and then during COVID, and then I slowly started doing them again, but I haven't really set up anything major. So I got to get some shows set up. But I do generally do a show every month or two.
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely try to do Heroes because that's the one where we'll have there's gonna be a kickoff party on Thursday that a lot of original art collectors will be at, and we try to make that at least right now the rallying point for the hobby is Heroes. We had a great turnout last year. Were you there last year?
No. Yes, yeah, that's where we had dinner at the Fleecs.
Right, exactly. That's where we had dinner with Felix.
That's where that story came from, and that's where I called you that horrible name to bring it full circle.
That's right. My last name is not hard to pronounce at all.
Not at all. Almost too easy.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, on that note, hopefully I'll see you at Heroes again.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be back. I'd love to be there. And thanks so much, everybody, for listening. Thanks for watching all my silly artwork. It's not your normal calf stuff, but I know that, I mean, obviously in the chat there are some other guys that they're right there with me, so this was fun. I love to talk about this stuff, and I'm very proud of my weird little collection. So I was happy to get to share it with you guys.
Well, I'm glad that you posted some of those pieces fresh to the site, and I'm glad you did share too, because it's like I said, I like artists who also collect. It's I just feel like it gives us an insight into the things that mean a lot to you, whether it's nostalgic or it's because you like looking, like you're saying, Williamson wouldn't be nostalgic for you, but you'd want a piece just because you love his work, I assume. I mean, it's something you would
Yeah.
love, you know.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the local man, obviously I'm not anywhere near as good as him, but when I'm drawing local man stuff, I'm thinking like this, let me try and do my Al Williamson, or like, so like people that look closely will notice like sometimes in like the folds in clothing, or like if in somebody's jeans, I'm trying to do my best Williamson and stuff like that. So yeah, that's somebody that I super love. And that, like, you can see right behind me, this blue stripe right there is that Star Wars box set where there's a Star Wars strips from the dude that did the EC box sets. But yeah, I love that guy's work.
The EC box sets, Cochran.
Yes, Russ Cochran.
Russ Cochran, yeah. Gosh, I haven't thought about him in a while. He was somebody I actually wanted to interview, and we were trying to set it up right before he passed. And I always regret that one, because he was such a force in the hobby early on, with his art and everything. But it made me realize that that's why I started doing more I think that was like the turning point for me. I used to do like maybe one interview a week, and when that happened, I was like, shit, man, I don't want to. I want to make sure I get to talk to everybody that I've always wanted to talk to, because there's too many great stories out there. I mean, there's no book that's going to be written about that guy, and he practically invented doing the original art auctions. I mean, I've got 80 of his catalogs behind me, just so I can look at what the artwork that's gone through that guy's hands, and it's a story that's lost forever.
I mean, he also invented like the Absolute Edition too. Like those EC volumes they have interviews, they have behind the scenes stuff. They're incredible.
Yeah, he was a definite visionary, and so yeah. Well, we can be talking another hour.
All right. I'm at 7% here, so I got to let you go anyway.
All right, cool. Well, Tony, thank you so much. Everybody in the chat, thank you for hanging out with us tonight. I'll be on tomorrow with Mannix and Jiggy doing an interview and art sale later on. So
go pick up.
Yep. Thanks a lot. Have a great evening.